Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the UFO Whistleblower Marathon. This is a three-part series. Each one of these three men have testified under oath in front of Congress. Our first guest is Michael Herrera, who witnessed a human trafficking operation in Indonesia where UFOs were involved. Michael Herrera.
Shawn.
Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you for having me here, brother.
It's an honor.
No, the honor is mine, dude. Seriously, there's so many people that are pivotal in this environment, I should say, that you've placed in this chair that have made other people uncomfortable with what they've talked about. A lot of people who understand not all is what it appears. So hopefully I get to add to that and share with the rest of the world, at least in the sense of what you're doing, because like I told you, I'm not talking to media about this.
Well, I appreciate it, brother.
Well, you're all about the truth these days just as much as I am, and it's ridiculous how much is being concealed for a narrative, and frankly, I'm disgusted with it.
I am too. You know, we try to do a number of things here, and the things that I try to do is document history from our military heroes, because nobody else is doing it. Bring truth, uncover corruption, and bring hope. We bring a lot of hope. You know, a lot of guys that are struggling, and women, you know what I mean, that are struggling and overcoming all that trauma. That's what we try to do here. And with you, we're bringing truth.
Yes, we are.
So,
and out of that, I want to bring hope too. You know, it's not just with what I'm dealing with amongst the other people here that, you know, have amazing stories too. As much as it sounds outlandish, and don't get me wrong, I think, you know, I can agree to that, at least with the outside perspective. Because before my event, I was actually very skeptical on it. I'm like, oh, that doesn't exist. ETs don't exist. Aliens don't exist. It's only out of movies and stuff. And it scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, you know, some of those movies. But then this event changed my life in that degree because it confirmed a lot that day. It confirmed multiple facets, not just with, you know, the technology aspect of it, but just the level of corruption and how deep this thing goes, you know. And needless to say, it's something that was a catalyst for other things to at least kind of change my life, to start not looking into it directly, but just try to go deeper. What actually makes things happen.
yeah.
You know, so...
Well, let me give you a quick introduction here real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So, Michael Herrera, you were in Indonesia in 2009. You had a UAP/UFO encounter. Mm-hmm. You were a U.S. Marine, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Yes.
And you were at Operation Ketsana, correct?
Yes, and Ketsana was in the Philippines, and we didn't participate in anything that. We actually got routed to go to Indonesia in that take. We're the only ship. Okay. So a lot of people are getting confused with that. The rest of the 7th Fleet stayed there, and we were the only element to actually go to Indonesia, far western side of Sumatra.
We'll get into all that.
Yeah.
But so we connected through Dr. Greer.
Correct.
At his conference in D.C., he brought in a handful of whistleblowers. You were one of them.
Yes.
Greer came on the show. He wanted a military audience, and I believe to get whistleblowers after the new law got passed where there was protection for people to come out.
And it's funny you say that because 2017, Dr. Greer actually came to Colorado. He was hosting an event in Boulder, kind of doing some disclosure, kind of talking about some of the technology with the ATs, you know, UAPs, and just reverse engineer stuff, just kind of go like the whole grand scheme of things. It was like a several-hour presentation. And I had my ex there at the time, and I kind of hinted to her that I needed to talk about some things with him. So he was doing a book signing. So I go over to his table, I snag a book, and I'm like, hey, can you sign this? And I was like, by the way, there's some things I need to talk to you about. And he kind of looked at me weird, and I said, it's very serious. So he handed me his card, and he says, don't ever relay this information out to anybody. And me knowing with what I knew at the time, you know, which obviously there was some stuff that were in the works until they recently passed here last year, 2 days either before or after Christmas when they put this law, which I think is the only good thing the administration's done so far, to be realistically speaking. I don't care if that makes people uncomfortable to know, but it's helped me out among other people. It might be the only good thing he's ever done. Fast forward to your show. You had him on the first time. And my fiance and me were watching it, and that's when he started relaying the information and started talking about the law that was being passed. And that's when I decided to reach out to him. And he knew exactly who I was, which was great. It was like having talking to a friend for a while. Now I was going to call him out of the blue, and it's just like everything just resumes back to normal. So I expressed to him, told him my story, my encounter with this and what happened. So then we arranged everything to go talk with the Senate Intelligence Committee, Congress, Senate, Pentagon, all that fun stuff. And it was a journey. It was definitely something that opened my eyes to a lot more, because here I'm thinking my event was something that was more specific. But come to find out, I'm just a cog in the wheel with this whole big thing, because there's other facets that I'm also confirming these guys' stories to a degree. Mm-hmm. The corruption, secret organizations that have some pull in this, and obviously some of the nasty stuff that they're doing. And there's other people down the road who are going to corroborate what I'm talking about too. I don't know who they are. Maybe some of the Marines that I encountered this with too. So I'm hoping that that's what's, at least if the message gets put out there from the show, I'm hoping that that's what it does, is they can get people to actually do something about it and not be afraid of it like I was. It was 14 years,
Yeah.
A lot of weight to carry, try to sweep it under, but the more you try to do that, whatever you resist persists. That's always a golden rule.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a damn good point. So just a quick synopsis here. You responded to a 7.6 magnitude earthquake and a tsunami hit in western Indonesia. Only your crew was routed to that location to provide support. Indonesia has a large terrorist population. The Marine crew was armed and tasked to provide security along with medical equipment and food supplies. But it was just your unit.
Yes.
Which there was 5 of you, correct?
Yes, there was. And so they ended up choosing the Marines out of my unit, at least in the company, to go out. So it's not like every single Marine in the company was able to do this. They just handpicked people to go on these sticks of 6 Marines. So originally it was supposed to be more of like a deterrence, but also overwatch protection. So that way these helos can drop the supplies. The logistics groups that were a part of it can then render aid or whatever it is to the local population there.
Was it volunteer or were you hand selected?
Hand selected.
Okay.
Or voluntold, I should say.
Okay, voluntold. Good way to put it.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, what are you hoping to accomplish by coming out?
I want other people who have witnessed similar things or are part of certain things that are very controversial but end up being true to come out and understand that what's going on is not acceptable. And this is just a facet of corruption. It may not be the political corruption that's coming out now that people are witnessing with their own eyes. People call them conspiracy theories. What I'm hoping to achieve is to get other people on board to understand that the government supports what we're doing, because they were in the dark about this too. And now they're coming out and they're actually putting the hammer down. Recent bills have been passing as far as legislation through the Senate Intelligence Committee saying that these corporations have to give the goods here in 6 months, or else there's going to be some consequences they're going to face, either through the judicial system, which obviously the government's got a lot of weight with that. The other aspect of it too is that they're going to ban these companies from doing contracting work for the government, which means they're going to lose billions of dollars. They're going to go broke. So I'm hoping that they actually comply with this measure, because one, this technology is going to help benefit humanity as a whole. Not in a militaristic sense, because that's just foolish. It's more to help out humanity, because now everybody's going to be on the same level technology-wise. I think the common ground here, and the narrative with that is you're hearing people come out, at least in the mainstream media, is trying to talk about ETs being evil. My event had nothing to do with ETs. And there's some misconstrued concepts that are going about. The technology may have came from ETs at one point, and that's what we witnessed. But we witnessed much more of a sinister plot with this, that they're using it. For people who don't know, 2009 during this operation, that's why we're responding, obviously with the humanitarian nature of this, because 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, that's mainly what the expertise is, at least as far as Marines go. It's not really combat operations for the most part, even though Indonesia, among other parts in that world, are large networks for terrorists and insurgents. Mm-hmm. So having that expertise of going in and try to help people, I think is also good to us, because it teaches you the balance of it. Instead of being a war fighter, you actually get to help people. Instead of launching bullets at people, you're still helping people in a different cause. You still get to be heroes for people, which is great. So totally incidental as far as our encounter. When we went onto the slope, because we had our LZ, it was a hasty LZ, and they're dropping supplies. They have, a bunch of stuff, and it's other helos too. They're just kind of forming a perimeter on the city, dropping Marines here. You could provide overwatch. Now, the only thing that's unsettling with this is the fact that they never gave us any comms. You know as well as I do how risky that is.
You didn't have any comms?
We didn't have any comms.
Interesting.
So the Marine that was with me, that was a higher rank than me, was very pissed off about it, because he was a Fallujah Marine, so he went through a lot of shit. Yeah. And one of those things, I remember him kept telling me, he's like, if everything ends up going to shit, and you look at me and if I'm fine, it means that you're going to be fine. And I remember him telling us all that in the stick, and he's a good Marine. He's a very outstanding guy. I learned a lot from him during my time in. And I thought about that concept, but then he started picking things apart too. And he wasn't very comfortable with that. But luckily the thing is that we were still relatively, close enough to the LZ, because when the bird was supposed to land, because obviously they were coming in, dropping the supplies, and they'd bank off. The last one that would come down would land. That's when we'd basically run to the helo, 300 meters. You're in good shape, and you have an average combat load, 120 rounds, so to speak, with an M16A4 and a Camelback. Not really much, so you can make that trek relatively quick. But they also have security on those birds too. With the flight crew, with the gunners on the sides, they had 50s on them. So if there is some opposition, they're going to meet with those on top of us engaging them. So we were positioned near this slope. It wasn't like a steep grade or anything, but it was enough to obscure what was going on the other side that we had no idea what was going on. So we got, naturally you want to take the high ground so you have observation of everything. And this is when we came across this operation. And it was something that stuck out like a sore thumb, because here you have terrain that is a jungle terrain, very green vegetation, things like that. And then you have something that's sticking out right in the middle of an opening, and it looks very odd. It's something that's, I'll remember to the rest of my life. To the day that I leave this earth, I'm going to remember seeing that, and it's just imprisoned up here. I had a camera with me. It was a Panasonic cheap camera. It had kind of like, ancient compared to what you got set up in the studio, But it was enough, at least, because it was part of stuff that I've never did a humanitarian assistance before. Mm-hmm. So I was taking videos of them dropping stuff off, things like that, until we trekked up to this point. Was taking some pictures, because it's a place you would never really ever go to, at least the real part of Indonesia. It's not like Bali or Surabaya, where it's like touristy stuff.
Yeah.
This is where it's actual culture, people. You're actually seeing reality here. So it's stuff that I kind of wanted to document and just say, I was a part of this. I can look back and say, I remember that. But then looking north past that slope and seeing that down, and I took some video and some pictures of that. And I had, I stuck it in my dump pouch. I was a saw gunner naturally, so I had M249. That was my favorite weapon. I liked having a belt-fed machine gun. As much as a pain in the ass, I liked having that compared to an M16 or an M4. So because we were in the humanitarian, all they did was give us M16A4s. They had RCOs at that time. They weren't the ACOGs. They had the mills on the sides for windage and stuff like that, as well as the PEC-15s. So if we were doing any kind of night range or night operation, we'd have those with our PVS-14s. So it's just a very basic loadout that we were doing. Nothing really crazy. And when we saw this happen, and I want to say unidentified, because right now it's identified. Everybody knows what they are now. They're either man-made or they're not. And if they're not, the government's coming out and telling people, admitting it, not directly, but they're still admitting it to a degree that it exists. Because why would they spend time with this legislation coming out?
That's a good point.
Why would they do that? If it doesn't exist, why were they going through these measures to basically hold a gun up to these guys' heads and say, you better relinquish this technology or else? They're not just doing it, and knowing and seeing this unfold, even being in this position of having to brief the Senate Intelligence among the Special Intelligence Service too, which oversees the letter agencies, because they have no idea what's going on either. But the fact that all of us coming together and making this loud amount of noise to get something done about it is just astounding. And now they're finally, for the first time in history, they're going through with this and actually trying to do something about it for their own understanding, but also know the corruption that's comes from this.
Yeah.
It's multiple different facets.
I mean, you guys already, all five of you, right, already testified in front of Congress?
So we testified to people of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which were there's some Congress people there as well as some senators.
So in front of the Intelligence Committee by the Senate?
Yeah, and as well as I do, in any kind of setting like that, whether you're in a SCIF, it's all under oath still, because they're having you sign NDAs and things like that. So you're expected to be truthful with this. Mm-hmm. And seeing the
a big
reaction,
deal.
it is a very big deal. It was nerve-wracking at first because I'm not used to talking to government officials in that nature. And having the support that they've been giving me as well as the protection is just something that I'm very thankful for. I'm very thankful that they all have open minds of this subject. Even though for years there's been a stigma to it. For years there's been a giggle effect because of little green men and flying saucers and all that. I myself never thought to this day that I'd ever see anything like this. So going back to the event, we decided to get in the tactical column and approach this, right? And we got down the slope, and it's just like a clearing and just has this big opening. It's almost a little bit more than the football field because this craft took up majority of that.
So let's just back up for a minute. Let's describe the setting, because at first you said there were helos doing racetracks around. Is this the same opening that you described earlier that you were watching helos drop supplies?
No.
Okay.
So where this was happening was southwest, at least where the helo insertion points were with the LZs that they were setting up, and they were flying very low in consideration, right? So, and the reason why I know this is because I asked the pilots after this, because I was on the officers' mess and I knew their call signs, and I approached them and I asked them very respectfully if they noticed anything strange. None of them said anything.
Okay.
So I was trying to see if they could get a view of a topside, because this is just something that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So also their call signs all stuck out too, because pilots like to do crazy stuff with their call signs, so it was very easy to track them down. But having this happen on the north part of the slope and it goes down, and obviously, the way it was transitioning colors, which was kind of the way that it appealed, because it was transitioning for a light matte black, a light matte gray to a dark matte black, and just kind of ranging in between, right?
Well, let's rewind a little bit before we get into the description.
Okay.
What was the activity with all the other helicopters? Were they active at the time that you saw the
Honestly,
UAP?
When we started going down there, no.
Okay.
And I don't know, because obviously we were occupied with this.
How far do you think it was?
So from the LZ where we were at was 300 meters roughly, okay, plus the slope that was concealing plus vegetation. Down the slope, it was like 400 meters maybe. So we got close. We trucked down quite a bit.
Okay.
About 150 meters outside, 150, 200, right? Halfway. And
So maybe about a click away.
Possibly, yeah.
At the
The
farthest.
craft itself might have been a click up.
Okay.
Yeah. And as like I said, the reason why I know how big this thing was because...
Did you see it as you crested the hill?
Yes, I did. And that's where I took videos and pictures of this thing. That's how I was able to see it, because, taking pictures of the chaos going behind and everything, you see in the rubble, burning buildings, flooding and all that kind of stuff. And then you turn around and I'm like...
So you crest this hill.
Yep.
You look down into the valley.
Yep.
And there's a clearing.
There's a clearing.
With a UAP.
Yes.
Just sitting there.
Sitting there,
hovering.
rotating clockwise, yep. And that's in transition, this color spectrum I was telling you too. And that's why it's something that stuck out. It's not a building, It's not something that you're used to seeing. Maybe topside it could have looked like a building or something that, I don't know. I don't have that perspective. I wasn't a pilot or anything, but I can tell you from our point of view, it's something that it looked very unnatural and abnormal. And that's what got our curiosity to go investigate this. Now, normally, because we would have had comms, you're damn right we'd have called it in. Report something suspicious. Maybe get some eyes on a helo, get a hold of their call signs, and try to do them fly around, and they never did. And obviously, we didn't have comms to do it, but they were more occupied with what was going on behind us. So when we trekked down and got around 150 to 200 meters from it, and this is an opening. By the way, there's no tactical advantage being in this situation, because you don't have cover. It's jungle. You have concealment, but this kind of concealment with vegetation is not bulletproof. Mm-hmm. So when we trekked up close, and we were attack column, so obviously you have points here, right, at each Marine. So you have visuals of the sides, somebody has point, and somebody has the rear. And all of a sudden we're enveloped by this military force I still to this day don't know who they are. And
how close did you get?
To the craft?
To the craft.
Roughly 200 meters, 150, 200.
Did you get to the bottom of the hill?
Yes.
So you saw the top of it, and then you could see underneath of it.
And underneath of it had this platform that was on the ground that was separate from this craft hovering. And it was very weird to see, and I was like, okay, I don't know if that's kind of like a cement pad or something. I don't know if it was like a helo pad or anything like that at first, but then started seeing how the material would kind of look very similar to what the craft was. It's like, well, that's separate. So you have something that's on the ground, stationary, and then you have something that's up top, and it's just rotating in a clockwise position. So right when we got close to it, at least 150, 200 meters out, then all of a sudden we were engaged, at least not in a hostile manner, at least, not gunfire or firefight or anything like that. But the way that these guys moved was so fluid, it was so still, it was very, very, very smooth. And it kind of indicated to me, after thinking about it for several years, is that these guys had done it for a while because of how smooth this operation was. Mm-hmm. So when we were in a tactical column going towards the center of this thing, they actually came from the flanks, but it was more of a diagonal, like a corner of the room, so to speak, right? For them, in a tactical advantage, they have interlocking fields of fire on every single person, and they had a team of 8, right? And the gear that they had was black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities.
So what you're saying is there would have been no they were professionals.
Yes,
there would have been no Mexican standoff where if they fired, they're shooting into their other squad. They had perfect angles.
Yes, they did.
To where both sides could engage you.
Yes. Team of 4, team of 4. So it was like a fire team element.
Without worrying about a blue on blue situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, with that being said, because as they approached us, you hear the safeties flip off. Now, your attention to detail, when you're seeing this kind of stuff, your sensors are very heightened, so you can pick up. I know you've been a combat veteran, you know all about that. Your heightened sense of awareness is going through astronomical changes.
Hypervigilant.
Yes. So you can hear stuff a lot clearer. And that's when you kind of picked up the hum that this object was doing along with these guys flipping their safeties off, especially M4s. It's very distinct sound. Anybody in this room who's held M4s and has shot them, M16s, things like that, it's very distinct sound to flipping it off. So we kind of knew, and they started yelling at us. They were like, you're not supposed to fucking be here. What the fuck are you guys doing here? Who the fuck are you with? So they knew they were using the kind of lingo that we were using too, especially in the military. So it made me think that at some point these guys actually were uniformed military at one point.
Any accents?
Not accents. It's just like American dialects, how you and I were talking. At one point they said they were going to smoke us. They could throw us out of a helicopter. It's very easy to get lost in the jungle out here. They kept saying stuff like that. So after they enveloped us, they all pretty much got in line. They told us to put our weapons, so we all got in line as well. And we had our hands up. We had our weapons slung. And they're having 2 guys watch while there's a guy basically taking our magazines out of our vest. And they're throwing them on the deck and they're kicking them away so we don't have time to react. They also, at the same time, the first thing they did was obviously take our weapon and clear it. But they took the magazine out and they actually held it in a way to where they could pull a charging handle and collect the round and have it not hit the deck. So the way that these guys operated was very smooth. It's very calculated, very precise. You could tell they've done this a lot, or they've rehearsed it a lot. Especially combat operations, you're doing terrain model rehearsals, you're doing rehearsals whether you're clearing rooms, trying to figure all that kind of stuff out. These guys kind of did the same thing, I'm assuming, because of how smooth it was. And because as well as I do, you have new guys that join a unit and they're not that fresh. They're very choppy because they have the basic understanding of either how to stack up and do room clearing. And the guys that have done it and been through combat deployments and all that, they're very kind of methodical, very smooth because they know what to expect. These new guys, it's not the same thing. You could tell these guys were seasoned. So as they did that, they actually, each Marine had 2 guys on them, plus one that was taking the stuff off of them. They actually knew where our military IDs were because in Marine Corps order, you have to have them in your left breast pocket.
So there were 15 of these guys, 3 on each Marine.
No. So they had other guys right here, and they had 3 that were just going through each Marine, while other people were holding each Marine at gunpoint. And they're not like super close to us range-wise with, because if you get a muzzle close, it's easy to grab it and, kind of fend off, especially with a rifle. But these guys were off at a standoff distance that even if you try to move, they could smoke you.
One search team of 3 guys.
Yes.
And then the rest of the squad was aimed in on you. Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, they're not anywhere where they could actually, there was people behind us because obviously if they had to engage, they're going to hit one of their own guys probably. So it was more like they were kind of moving the same way through all of us, all 6 of us, taking our stuff, taking pictures of our military IDs, So they had like these devices that kind of look like a very thin, it looked like a smartphone modern day right now, because in 2009 it wasn't the case. I think the most high-tech thing they had at that time were maybe Blackberries, but they're bulky at that point with the ball, and then they had their flip phone razors and things like that. But these look like something you'd see today. and they were taking pictures of military IDs, and they had some other device that was like remind me of a BAT system. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Describe it.
It's like a biometrics tracking system. So what it does is when you come across with an insurgent, you can take pictures of their face, their retinas,
I know what you're
fingerprints,
yeah,
something like that. But they were trying to scan their IDs with this thing, and it wasn't working. So they're kind of getting frustrated with it. So as this is going on,
did they collect biometrics from you?
no,
Okay.
no. Which I mean, they took pictures of us, but that may be enough. And then they took our IDs, because some people I talked to that are in the special operations community with that, they said, yeah, we have the ability to scan IDs, and it tells us everything about you. Military IDs, driver license, things like that. So it's very high speed stuff. I mean, and considering this was in 2009 compared to now, I mean, of course, they had this thing that they were using to load up stuff. It's very advanced physics, something hovering off the ground, not making any sound, but an audible hum, like a guitar amp or something that's like a transformer.
So it didn't sound like a jet.
No.
It didn't sound like a helicopter.
Hell no.
There was no engine noise.
Nope.
Just a hum.
Just an audible hum. It's very creepy to see because it's not normal.
Was it like a bassy hum?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Like a guitar. Like if you were to unplug it, I mean, it wasn't the same pitch, but it was like the same kind of sound, same kind of noise that it emitted. And so as they're searching us, we're watching this thing happen. And that's when we started seeing trucks come from our left and go onto this platform. And they were up armored 350s. I know exactly what 350s are. They were kind of beefier trucks. They were matte black. When they were coming at us, and they go left. And I was glancing between what was going on in front of us with these guys, and then all of a sudden glancing over to what was going on behind them. And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. Had a pyramid structure on top that was black, and you can see the shadowing of it as it rotated. But it was rotating very slow. And then it had like these vents on every single corner on the middle part of these the panels anyway. There was like a Vanta black. It was like a dark black that would like absorb light. Very weird.
What do you mean by that? A dark black that would absorb light?
So, if you ever familiar with the BMW, they painted Vanta black. It was like a very super dark black. It's not like a reflective material at all.
The matte black?
Yeah, but very, 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 even darker than matte black.
Okay.
Like you could shine a light at it and it won't even illuminate.
Like the Batmobile?
Kind of. Something like that. But even, it was like very dark. So, only I can describe it as like that Vanta black. Okay. And
when you mean absorb light, you're saying if I shine a laser on it, you might not even see the laser,
Correct.
or it would be very dull.
Correct.
Okay.
Something like that. So we're watching these vehicles, right? These trucks. Now, the thing I would say on the front of them, because Humvees, the military has, they have the IR lights on the front near the headlights that you can drive at nighttime with your knots. So they had the same thing because they had the same kind of slits that had the IR lights. But they had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And, you could store like a couple hundred weapons, maybe 100 weapons, maybe a platoon, a company-size element. And it was the same Pelican casings that we would use to store stuff when they were transloading, So very big cases on 2 of them in each truck bed. And then they had a shipping container thing. I mean, it looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. And the thing that was different about this is I had a cylinder on the front of it that was towards the truck. It was like parallel to the ground. Just a cylinder right on the top of this thing. And for years I thought, okay, there's got to be oxygen supply or like a vacuum sealing thing that you would, because obviously I'm thinking it's drugs. I was like, okay, so this is a very advanced way to do that, just years of thinking of this. And come to find out, when I gave my speech in D.C. on that Saturday for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer, he's got a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, by the way. And this gentleman, I'm not going to give any detail. I know a little bit about him, but he works in some of these projects at some very controversial facilities. He's aware of what was going on. After I gave my presentation of this, he confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he went explaining what the operations do, why they do it, and what they were using them for. And he says, there's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
Human trafficking.
Yes. His own words. And, of course. And he also wants to come forward, at least with him and 30 other people that are involved with that part of the work. But it was very disheartening to actually get that information relayed to me Because here I'm thinking for years it's drugs and it's a much sinister thing. But it makes sense because they use natural disasters that people are going to be missing anyway.
Yep.
To scoop up people.
I mean, I've been covering human trafficking this year.
Right.
And that's, a lot of the human trafficking comes from third world countries in distress. You're in a third world area.
Yep.
In distress right after an earthquake would be, it's prime.
Yeah.
Prime time to do a human trafficking operation.
Right.
How big were the containers?
I would say probably 8 feet and 10 feet. 8 feet tall, 10 feet within.
So like maybe half a Connex box?
Yeah, about that.
Okay.
And they were kind of like on the trailer that was underneath was kind of like a regular Humvee trailer that you would see kind of pull stuff, something like that.
How were they being lifted into the craft?
So they were driving onto this platform that was angled, so it would hit, and it just raise up, and they were just driving on this ramp.
Oh, the truck would go up?
Yeah, but the whole thing was a ramp.
Okay.
Like a circular ramp. And I mean, obviously I can't see what's on the other side of it, but I'm assuming because it's a circular pattern that it's going to be the same on the other side. Because they would drive onto this platform, and at that point I saw all the doors open, 4 guys would come out, and then I'd going back to what we're facing here with these guys searching our stuff, asking us questions, taking our IDs, trying to intimidate the crap out of us. And so I can see the guys come out of the truck. And that was making me think too, like at a tactical advantage, we didn't have that. There's only 6 of us, basically trained infantry Marines. And there's these guys here that are, doing this operation and very skilled, very methodical, very calculated, very precise. And if there's 8 of them, and then all of a sudden every single truck has 4 of these guys, I know that it's not just these guys that are running the perimeter. They could have been 40 or 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
Could have been a platoon-size element. And the fact that we have no concealment, we barely have any concealment, because if we were to run and bank off the sides here to go to our flanks, they could just engage us. There's nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
Vegetation ain't going to stop bullets, but... So there's a lot of questions I have too, because it's, obviously if we would have engaged them, then the whole rest of the force behind us would know about it because they'd heard the commotion.
Yep. How many containers do you estimate were put into the craft? 4,
because I saw 4 trucks.
4 containers?
Yeah. And there could have been more, but at that point where we saw, we could have, because we stumbled onto this thing. We ruined their operation, so to speak, because we weren't allowed to see that.
Well, let's talk about the craft.
Okay.
How big was it?
300 feet is what I'm estimating, about a football field. And the reason why I say this is because we flew on CH-53 Super Stallions. I'm sure you're familiar with those, your time as a SEAL. They're roughly 100 feet, all right? So from nose to tail, if you lined up 3 of them, it'd fit 3 of them under this craft. Because I can see, especially the operation behind us, you kind of see them off in the distance, so you try to gauge, as a Marine, you're always trying to judge distance, you know what I mean? Because if you're having to engage, but lo and behold, we end up having a surprise right here happen with these guys. But that's how I know it was around 300 feet.
Okay. And it was circular.
Circular. It's like an octagon because it had like corners on it that was like an octagon shape, but still circular.
Could you see, was it one smooth piece of metal?
No.
Was it panels?
Panels. Yep.
How were they, just describe more. Were there windows? Were there
openings? Were not windows, nothing I could see like that. They just had that Vanta black vent-looking things on each corner is all I saw with that. And it had like a octagonal scale pattern that went through it. It honestly reminded me kind of like a design for an F-22 Raptor.
Okay.
I like the top of it kind of looks like that. Yeah. That's what it kind of reminded me of because it would transition those colors. So I suspect, I've had people I've talked to about this to say, well, Lockheed Martin has reverse engineered stuff that's circular. Raytheon, they have triangular craft. And he said it might have been Lockheed because Lockheed also made the F-22.
Interesting.
Similar design concept. Now that I think about it, right, because at this time you're not really thinking about it. You're like, I'm more concerned with these guys and who the hell they are. So after we witnessed the last truck going on there, and we're still dealing with that. I got searched already, of course, and I'm just paying attention to what's going on. I'm making sure my guys are good, too. And all of a sudden, the trucks, we never saw them again. They were not on that platform. There was like boxes and stuff that were on that platform. And so I'm assuming they either drove off on the other side or disappeared or where they went. I don't know. But all of a sudden, we noticed that this platform raises off the ground by itself. It doesn't make any noise, by the way. It doesn't disturb anything. It's just,
Before it started gaining elevation,
yeah.
how high off the ground was this?
The actual craft,
Yes.
I would say probably 20 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, good distance. And the platform rose up, but I would say like the platform was up several feet, right? Probably maybe 5-6 feet, because it was from the distance probably about half an inch.
I mean, I'm envisioning the way you're describing this, I'm envisioning an octagon.
Yep.
Rotating clockwise with a drop ramp similar to maybe something you would see on the back of a C-130, C-17, but circular.
But circular and separate. There's no cables. There's no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was the ramp attached to the craft?
No.
So there was just an opening.
There was just an opening. Like the bottom part of the craft, was what I'm assuming, because that's where I saw it lift up and go into. It was like the bottom part. It was like the floor itself was like the platform, and they were just rolled up, right? But at the same time, the top part leveled a little bit and went down to meet with this. And as that happened, you start to see it rise up past the tree line. And it's not like a super fast and just rapid. It's just like kind of slow. As that's going on, the rotation has not changed. The audible hum has not changed. But
It's not like somebody hit the gas and you hear a different.
yeah, it's nothing like that.
Noise. It's
No,
just
constant.
okay.
Each point on that octagonal shape started to illuminate colors. Like, and it was just one color per point. It was red, it was green, it was yellow, and it was blue. Those are the only colors I saw, and it was rotating, right? As soon as it got to the top of the tree line, like cleared the trees, this thing shot off to the left. And to the left was the ocean, by the way. It was just going west.
How far to the left was the ocean?
Probably a good mile and a half, maybe.
That's it?
Yeah, it
So
wasn't
you're
very-
right on the coastline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, I would say, it could be a mile and a half to 3 miles, I'd estimate, because I mean, that's just estimation. I don't really know, because it took us a little bit when we landed into the near Padang City, because we landed at the airstrip, and then we took like a several-minute flight going from southwest to like northeast part, roughly. So I'd say probably a couple miles to kind of estimate. And like I said, it didn't change pitches of noise or anything, and it just completely shot off. I mean, it's just like a blur that went left. Didn't make a sonic boom like you'd see a fighter jet when you see the pressure the way that happens. It didn't disturb any of the trees like what rotor wash would do on a helo or a jet flying the map of the earth and leaving exhaust and blowing you kind of see Top Gun movies when it cranks up on that.
propulsion.
Nothing. There were even coconuts that you could visibly see on these trees. None of them were disturbed.
No shit.
Yeah. And me, I like aircraft. That was my thing. I wanted to be a pilot, but that didn't happen. I wanted to fly the Harrier. And I know about aircraft. I know everything that we've got. I know everything about them. From a little kid, that's all I wanted to do. But obviously, then being infantry was the next best thing. So it wasn't something I've never seen before. Something I know that we didn't have, at least in the conventional wise, on top of the military force that was there.
We're all hooked up, ready to go. The jump master's got his arm up, getting ready to hit me in the back. And then we see shuffling, and I'm only one of 12 guys that I jump with every time.
He filed a classified complaint under oath, and the Intelligence Community Inspector General said that he found the complaint urgent and credible.
A guy from the back shuffles his way to the front, and it's one of the escorts. He is unmistakable. I get a knock at the door. It's that same guy who cut me out of the door. Hands me a note. It said, thinking of you. He's like, hey, sorry about your loss, buddy.
I think it gives weight to a lot of the people that have come forward and talked about having direct first-hand experience.
To me, it just felt like somebody looking you dead in the eye and said, I can touch you anytime I want.
Well, when was the assassination attempt?
So we go inside, meet another escort in there, take us to this freight elevator. One of the guys looks at my dad and is saying to both of us, keep your head down, your eyes on the heels of the man in front of you, or you'll be shot. What could somebody threaten you with to make you turn your back on your own child?
So as that took off, we're all of a sudden ordered to face that slope that we came down. And then, like I said, it's not very high up. I mean, it's high enough to obscure everything to kind of go down in the valley. And so as we turn around, I'm like, fuck, they're going to do it. I think they were just going to, fucking rip us right there.
Yeah.
And
Or they're going to kill you.
yeah. Does that mean it's like,
Before we get to that,
yeah.
when you saw this thing take off, I mean, do you have any estimation of speed? Have you seen anything? I mean, was it faster than anything you've seen before?
Yeah.
Was it a normal speed? How?
No, it was faster. It was the fastest thing I've ever seen. It was, I would say, probably 4,000 or 5,000 miles an hour. I mean, it was instantaneous. It was just like it left a blur.
Okay.
Like a jet screaming by going as fast as it possibly could, you can still make the shape of it and still lock your eyes onto it as it's going. There's no way in hell you could lock your eyes onto this thing as it's moving. That's how fast it was.
Okay.
And eyesight, something moving, your eyes are naturally going to pick up that motion. And this didn't do that. I mean, it was just like, it just left a very fast blur. And like I said, I've never seen anything like that. The way that it moved, the way that it didn't make any sound, completely, didn't change pitch of the hum or anything like that.
Did it go at an upward angle? Was it a straight line?
It just looked like a straight line from what I could see. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it went up in the sky or anything. It was just like went over the trees and was gone.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, knowing aircraft and things like that, it just wasn't something normal. Something completely faster, something doesn't make any sound. I mean, radar signature, I have no idea. But there's theories that maybe the design of it could not reflect radar signals. I mean, I don't know how that go. I'm not, I don't work in that project or anything like that, but it's just something that's very odd to see. Very, very alarming.
Did the lights stay on as it took off?
Yep.
But
you couldn't even see the blurs of lights even. It was just this black blur that just left.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, it was creepy. It was fucking creepy to see.
Yeah.
And, of course, we're like dumbfounded because you've never seen anything like this. And this is like some Hollywood shit, Make the ships from Independence Day look like a joke, with how fast this thing was. So it was very, very, very weird to see that. And like I said, as we were ordered to turn towards the slope that we came down, and that's when I thought it was it. I thought they were going to smoke us, and they kept saying that, we can kill you right now. They're as this is going on, they're talking shit. They're looking at us. They're taking pictures. They're doing, everything that they're trying to do to clear us. So as we turn this, and all of a sudden, I see a sling pass over my head. I'm like, oh, fuck, they're going to strangle me. But that wasn't the case. They actually tightened it so well that when they placed it, and, it's crossbody, and obviously the buttstock of the rifle is up on the right shoulder, and the muzzle's kind of more towards your left. And they tightened the sling so well that if you try to get it off, it's going to struggle, right? And they started putting the magazines in, and they put all 6 of them in our vest, but they put it in a way that wasn't tactile. They put them like right side up where you can see the brass, right? Because brass to the grass is usually what we always train our Marines to do. So you just take it out, pop it in, boom, right? And they did in the case it'd be tactical. It wouldn't be a tactical advantage to do that. So by the time you get your weapon off, try to put a magazine in and charge it, you're already going to get smoked.
Yeah.
So
you were standing up when they did this?
Yes. Yep. And when I saw that sling come over, I mean, I was like, fuck, I thought they were going to strangle me.
Were they talking to you as they were doing this?
Yes. That's when they were saying they're going to, smoke us. They're going to kill us. They could shoot us, leave us here to die, stuff like that.
Why do you think they were doing? I mean, it sounds like they were taunting almost.
They were. And I think, my personal opinion is I think they really wanted to kill us. But if they made any, because they didn't have suppressors, they had M4, A4s. They had like the high-speed setup. They had actual ACOGs. They had the honeycombs on them. They had the PEC 16s, which is a step up from what we had. They had steel magazines. Their weapons were like they were brand new.
Do they have nods?
No. They had ball caps, though.
Ball caps?
Yep. They had no insignias, nothing that would signify what their rank was, nothing that would signify what branch if they were. There's nothing to identify. And, law enforcement agencies will typically try to be uniform with all black, so you can't really identify who they are specifically. And it's like how these guys were doing the same thing. Because I know in AOs, at least where you have friendlies, you want to identify who's what because that's how you're going to coordinate between everybody, if you know who's friendly, who's not. So if you're having to do anything like airstrikes, close air support, CASEVACs, you know what to say and what they look like. Paint the picture for what you're getting into to provide other people that intel. And these guys were just uniform black, ball caps, and it's just, you know, it's very obvious that these guys didn't want to be identified, but they had American dialects, they had American lingo similar to what Marines would use, or at least military. So that's why my suspicion is I think that these guys at one point were uniform military, and maybe they got swept into this program, whatever it is.
Could you see their faces?
I did. Three of the guys had facial hair, right? Kind of stubble. Some of them kind of, not really long beards, but like an operator look, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rest of the guys didn't. Some of them had kind of blonde hair, at least you can see from right here. Some of them had like black hair, and then just regular white complexion. Some of them had blue eyes, some of them had brown eyes, and I think one guy that I saw had, he was the one that was mainly focused in on us as we were getting searched. And you can see he had kind of like grayish blue eyes. So I don't know what military force. I mean, obviously it's not conventional.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the question, if they ever come out and they decide to ever do this and say, yeah, I was there with these guys, I would have a question. So the question would be, why did you let us go? Or what were you guys thinking? Or why were you guys doing this, for the matter? Because this isn't something that, you know, me consciously, there's a lot of things, especially finding out that this happens to do with human trafficking. Morally, I could never do that.
Yeah.
That's a touchy subject for me.
They might not know.
Yeah. And that's just it, too. I mean, they could have. I mean, maybe the guys in the trucks were more of the darker side of things that were doing the hands-on, and these guys were securities. I mean, there's so many theories with this. You know, I've seen some flack on Reddit about this. And you got all these armchair quarterbacks like, oh, I wouldn't have surrendered my weapon. Oh, yeah? So you get pulled over by a cop. And he's got his gun drawn in because, you know, there's some people that's their interaction with police because they're known to be violent people. The cop is not going to take any chances. They're going to pull out their sidearm and they're going to approach the vehicle like this, tell you to get the fuck out, right? Are you going to chance anything if this guy is shooting you? If he's holding you at gunpoint?
No.
No, you got kids, you got a wife, you know, you got a bunch of stuff to live for. I know these Marines had the same thing. But it's always these people who are going to talk this shit who are not there. Because I know for a fact that I'm here today talking to you about this. I was here, you know, talking to the Pentagon and talking to all these other people about this to testify to them and tell them what happened. And I'm glad that, you know, I'd rather get the flack than to have to sit there and actually, whatever story they would have spun up to say that, you know, maybe one Marine got PTSD or something, decided to kill his own squad and then kill himself. I mean, whatever they would have spun it to be. If these guys have this kind of technology and these resources, they can do anything.
Yeah.
They're above the law, clearly. So as they gave us our stuff back and we're going up this slope, they're still talking shit. They're still saying, you know, we could kill you. Don't fucking look back or we're going to smoke you. So as soon as we went over the top and all of a sudden we didn't, you know, they weren't pursuing us and we fucking hightailed it. We ran down this fucking slope, trying not to trip over shit, go to the LZ, and there were still helicopters flying. You know, they were flying relatively low with the shipments that they had that were attached, and then they were landing, dropping the stuff off, and then they were taking off, right? And they were just coming and going back and forth. There was a gunnery sergeant there that was not in my unit. I think he was attached to the ship. It might have been kind of like their logistical support unit or whatever it is, because I know each ship has logistical support for Marines, right, that are on the ship, either active security, whatever it is. There was a gunnery sergeant there, and he was like fucking pissed because we showed back up and we weren't supposed to. And then we had our weapons, you know, so why were we conditioned for? You know, we tried to play dumb, so obviously we kind of like set up a perimeter and then we adjusted ourselves. Some of my guys, you know, they'd help us get our stuff unslung and then we'd load it back up and, you know, act like everything was normal. But I can tell everybody's faces were like, what the fuck? Very, very concerning stuff. And here's the thing, though. If stuff is still going on to this day, which I'm sure it is, because if they're, you know, come to find out, and I know you probably know this, human trafficking is the biggest revenue generator for these guys, for these organizations. Second's drugs, third is weapons. So if they're hitting all three, and obviously they're not going to want to give up their operations being known for that because it's illegal. It's not going to sit very well in the public eye. A lot of people have children. I personally don't have kids, but I know you as a dad would not fucking stand for that kind of shit. Yeah. Because then you have the thought in your head that it's going to be my kids are going to end up like this. that potentially could. And it's not a very comfortable thing people realize. And having them known to see this happen, it sucks. And this is kind of more why I'm pressing towards getting the resolution done with this, to make the government aware of it. Because if that's going on, it's got to be stopped. That's some evil nature right there. And I can't believe that there are actually people participating in this. And if they know about it, fucking shame on them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are two subjects that I really wanted to dive into this year. I'm fascinated with the UFO UAP genre,
Right.
and I want to expose as much as possible the stuff about human trafficking and
Right.
everything that goes into it. We've already started that, and to see these two arenas start to intertwine it's very alarming.
It tells you how much money is being spent. And it tells you that there's companies here that the government doesn't know about that are participating in this.
Yeah.
And it's not even, something that happens in the United States. It may, it definitely does. But to see the operation, because think about it, it's perfect cover. Because let's say if you're hiking somewhere out here and you see that unfold and you try to call the police, you try to call, federal, state, local agencies, or even the military for that matter, try to report this, are they going to take you serious?
No.
They wouldn't.
It's becoming more and more common
Yes.
as time goes on. But yeah, what sucks about this is we're in this time period where everybody knows. Not everybody, but it seems everybody that I know knows that the media is false.
Yeah.
It's fake. They don't report everything. They lie.
No, they don't.
But at the same time, a lot of people won't put any validation or trust in anything that hasn't been covered by
Right.
mainstream media. So we're in like this time period where there's a transition happening.
There is, and it's thanks to people like you. And I'm glad that there's people with me doing this too, that, it's easy for people to sit there and try to judge what they would have done in these situations. And the bottom line is we have gotten a point in our life, and I don't mean us specifically, but I mean the rest of the world, where they get so disturbed with things, but they don't do anything about it. They want other people to do it. Oh, I'm unhappy with the situation. Well, fucking change it or help change it.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the word out there. We're trying to get the government, at least the right parts of the government, to do something about this. And, among other things that you see with corruption, for example, you talk about the media. Like I was a security, at least for my private security firm for the America's Frontline Doctors in Washington, D.C. And they came to talk to President Trump about COVID not being as serious as what the media is trying to say it is. They said that vaccinations are not something required to beat this. They were talking about natural immunity. They were talking about all the things that we already knew. Well, people were getting silenced for it. And I'm seeing these doctors, especially Dr. Simone Gold, so they try to wrap her up because she was part of the January 6th thing. But she's actually a really nice lady. But she's explained to us how everything worked because they took us out to dinner, to try to thank us. And it was very cool to network with these people. And then all of a sudden you go after the event and you start seeing the news articles pop up about these people. And it's completely defamation. It's completely stuff that's not even related. And it's one of those things that it sucks to see because their lives were ultimately ruined for speaking out about the truth. But here's the thing, there comes great risk to stuff. My life doesn't get lavish because of what I'm doing today and what I've been doing. It becomes hell. I've had numerous encounters with fucking helicopters hovering over my house. They were hovering over my dad's house. They get so low where they rattle the walls. Scare the shit out of the animals that we've got. His dogs were going fucking crazy at that point. And he was concerned because he was home and he was like, I've never heard anything like that. So, I've taken videos of this too, but seeing seeing regular black helicopters that don't even have insignias on them, nothing. And they're just sitting there. But the thing about it that is at least noticeable about this, and it's just kind of there's a hysterical factor to this, how much money they're fucking spending on this to happen, to try to either intimidate me or anybody else for that matter. There's some elected officials and even some government officials I know that are having the same thing happen to them because they've told me about it personally. through our encrypted source of what we talk about. So they instructed me that anytime that something like this happens, that I could record it, take pictures, because they'll see the timestamps of everything taken and let them know the time, and they'll investigate it. Because they can have access to the FAA systems and among other systems that can actually relay where these people are going. They can listen into their comms, because they have to guide through the FAA air traffic, where they're going. I live by the airport in Denver. And the airspace there is restricted because they have airplanes that are flying, every directions to try to, passenger airliners or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it's not a normal flight path for helicopters. That's what stuck out to me. They were doing it at my place of business where they'd fly over, they'd stop, and then, they would bank off. My dad's house, they get low, enough. It's just, it doesn't become glamorous by speaking about this.
And you have people maybe that you've met through when you testified in front of the Intelligence Committee that are helping you. They're telling you, hey, record this shit, timestamp it, let us know any information you can possibly get.
Yes,
reported.
because they said they'll look into it because they know, and several of them are having to deal with this personally.
Is this happening to any of the other whistleblowers that you know?
I know it happens to Dr. Greer all the time.
Okay.
Other whistleblowers, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's not something that, maybe they do notice, because you're hyper vigilant with what's going on. Because, with what we're doing, it's putting us in the spotlight, but it's also putting the fucking crosshairs onto us. And the only thing I'm thankful is coming public with this information, at least if something does happen. And I'm not going to rule that out. But if anything does happen, then it kind of proves what we're talking about to be true. And the reason being is because they would not be going through these measures to try to intimidate for no reason.
Yeah.
We're keeping people up at night because of what we're talking about, and that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I even told these government officials when I had my meetings, I'm like, first and foremost, you guys need to understand something. I am in the right state of mind to do this. I don't feel like harming myself. I don't feel like, because everybody makes the joke that Epstein didn't kill himself. No way in shape or form related to that, right? And so same goes here. Like I have no means to harm myself. So if anything happens, it's not from me.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Well, yeah, that needs to be on record, and people need to understand that, because if something does, it's not because I turned a gun on myself or anything like this. Specifically, I'm going to talk about something. El Toro, Marine Corps Air Station El Toro. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It was out in California. There was a colonel there that they didn't even know that this was going on his base. But they were flying flights in that had drugs on them. And they were unloading it on his base, and he found out about it, so he went to question them. 2 days later, they find him dead.
Really?
Yep.
Is this on record anywhere?
Yes, it is. You can Google this information. Put Marine Corps Colonel suicide, El Toro. Okay. You can pull this out. Anybody of these viewers can do that too. The family thought it was very alarming because the circumstances. So they did a second opinion for an autopsy. And they said that there was extreme blunt force trauma to his head, which killed him. But then they had gunshot wounds. So there's a shotgun that were supposed to stage to look like a suicide. And so I'm glad that the family actually got the second opinion to say, no, it was blunt force trauma to the back of the head is what killed him, and they tried to make it look like a suicide. And this is a colonel, and the thing that sucks about this is the Marine Corps itself actually tried to use this as a tool to say, you know what, suicide awareness is such a big thing, and it happens with every rank, and they were using this guy for this purpose. But then all of a sudden you start delving into this information and seeing that, the reports that he was making about these illegal flights coming in, and they were unloading drugs. It clearly... These guys, it doesn't matter what rank you are, it doesn't matter what position in government you have, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. If you're going against what they're, exposing what they're doing, they're going to get you. So if something does happen, I'm just putting it out there that it's not from my own doing. I don't fucking piss anybody up, maybe in the business world to a degree, but it's not enough for them to sit there and do something like that. And I'm glad that I have a private security firm where I've got some guys who look out for my best interests, and they know what I'm doing. So they've got my back, realistically speaking. And, and that's the thing too, is any other whistleblowers who, because I urge other people to come out. If they're needing protection on the way, I'll help with that. I'll orchestrate. But two, the other thing is too, coming out in the fashion that we did was the best, because now the right people in the government know. So it's almost like having a pit bull that's one to rip you to fucking shreds, but you have this fence that's between you and this pit bull. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the government's going to be that fence, and along with the spotlight that this put me in.
Yeah.
Because it's unsettling to sit there and see these helicopters, man. It's just, it's hysterical. You sit there and wave at them, but it's like, keep wasting your fucking money.
Let's talk about the debrief that happened afterwards.
Yes.
What happened when you got back to your command?
So when we got back onto the ship, we ended up returning our weapons to the armory, went to our berthing, put our gear away, went back to the flight deck. There was this admiral there. I'd never seen him before. I don't know who he is. It was just very out of place. He gave a debrief saying, hey, this was good that you guys are doing for these people, which I agree with. But I have no idea who he was. But, I've been on 6 ships, did several humanitarian operations, and not once have I ever seen an admiral on any of them. And this was minor compared to the one in 2011 we did with Fukushima and that natural disaster. Never seen an admiral with that, right? So it's just very out of place. So we went to, after we concluded this operation, we ended up docking in Subic Bay for some liberty. It was just like 4 days. So the people that we encountered during that event didn't even bother to take my camera or anything. It was in my dump pouch, but it was small enough, so I don't know why they wouldn't have searched it, but they missed it, right? So here I am the whole time thinking like, fucking A, I've got something. I'm not fucking crazy, and neither of us are crazy. Like, we've got something that actually backs up if we were to tell anybody about this, and we can show them pictures of it off of a camera and not something like a computer screen where they can doctor it. Well, I spoke too soon, because when we ended up going out that first day, we came back to report back to the ship, and I saw my camera on my rack, and the memory card was out of it, and it was a big memory card, and the battery was out of it, and I just see the camera sitting. I'm like, what the fuck? So I checked my locker. It was secure because that's where I had it, and I had some stuff on top of the camera in there, in my locker that were on top of the camera, and I had another battery in there, so I took that battery and I put it in there, and it wouldn't even turn the fuck on. And I had some people reach out to me that said, if you had that camera still to this day, that they could do some data retrieval and maybe able to pick it up. I'm like, but I don't have that camera. I tossed it because the fact that it wouldn't even turn on, it wouldn't do anything. I'm like, fuck, it's just a paperweight. And of course, 2009, you're not thinking of anything with forensics, where they could do something. There was people actually willing to do that, which is great. So somewhere out there, somebody's got this footage. Somebody's got that tape, because there's some reason why they took it. And fun fact is that the other 5 Marines that were with me, they had their phones taken.
Did you look at the pictures before? Did you have a chance to look at the pictures?
I took pictures and videos of it because I saw the record thing, and I actually can snap the photos, and you can see like it blink. That's the only way to describe it. So I knew for a fact.
But you didn't go back and review them? Okay.
No.
Why not?
One, I didn't see it. Want anybody to see.
Okay.
Just for that reason. It was just something to keep, if anybody doesn't know about it, then if I start telling people, then obviously there's things that may happen. Mm-hmm. And of course it did happen regardless, because as soon as we're out in town, all these people, I don't know who it was who did this, by the way, but they didn't even cut my lock. They popped it off somehow because my lock was still intact. So these guys are obviously know how to do it, and I don't know who it was, but all of a sudden the other Marines had their stuff taken too. And anybody in the platoon, they didn't have any of their stuff touched. It was only us that were there.
Did they take anything else?
No. Nope. So after we get done with that, we end up going back to Okinawa, right? And this was a regular normal day. It's probably fast forward a month after we end up getting back. All of a sudden, a duty Marine knocks on my door and says, you need to report up to the CP. I'm like, roger that. So I get my cover, run downstairs, run over, and there's nobody there. I'm like, well, what? This is fucking weird. And all of a sudden, I go inside, and there's this big opening in his office, and then they have these little offices that have these doors that you can walk into. So all of a sudden, I'm greeted by somebody in Air Force dress blues, and he didn't have a cover on, but he had salt and pepper hair, white complexion, older gentleman. He didn't have a name tag on his uniform, which, come to find out, Air Force regulation states that you have to have a name tag on your uniforms. Marine Corps, we don't do that unless it's our camouflage, or if you're a drill instructor or some kind of instructor or some sort of billet that requires you to do that. So he calls me over, and I go over, give him the proper greeting of the day, and then he tells me, go ahead and sit down over here in this office. So I sit down, and he doesn't even bother to sit down. He just says,
you, though? Wasn't the other 5 Marines?
No, they end up having the same thing happen, but this guy did it separately.
It's all individual?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't all together. So he told us, again, with what you guys saw, you're not allowed to report this. You're not allowed to talk about it to your family, not to your chain of command. I don't care if a general even asks you. You can go to prison for this. You could be executed. And if you want to chance that, by all means, but you need to sign this. So I take the paper and I look at it, and it's a non-disclosure agreement. The only two things I can recall to this day is that it said TSSCI and it said Indonesia. Those are the only things I could recall. But I skimmed through it and I fucking signed it because here I am thinking, okay, we're just going to forget about this whole fucking ordeal. And yet this is getting thrown in our face, and here's somebody threatening our fucking lives here with, imprisonment, death, things like that, if we're to talk about this.
Did you ask him any questions?
I tried to ask him who he was, and he didn't say anything. There's some speculation going on about this because people who know about this, whether it's other whistleblowers and other people have came forward previously, have said that these guys have the ability to impersonate or even play off as their military officials or anybody for that matter in the government to try to extract information to see what you know. So I'm not, because it's odd that he didn't have a name tag. He had the only thing I could tell is that he had a stack of ribbons. Air Force gives ribbons and medals for just about anything, but he had silver jump wings is the only thing I can recall. So other people I've talked to in the military community are still active, just trying to get information. And now they know because I've came out. They were saying that that if it was an Air Force officer, that has to do with someone Air Force intelligence. Because a lot of them had jump wings, and that's kind of the thing that they like to do. He says it's because he didn't have any pilot wings or nothing that would signify he was a pilot. It was just those silver jump wings. Yeah. Just with the parachute, and they had the wreath that come up like this. That's the only thing. And obviously he had the silver oak leaves on his shoulders. But so after dealing with that, it's like, okay, signed it. I'm like, great. Just fucking leave it behind. The rest of my career, don't tell anybody about it. Didn't tell my family. I told my dad before I ended up getting out of active duty and going to reserves. I said, there's something I got to tell you. And he even told me this, when I started coming out publicly about it, and after I had gotten through the right part of the government to go ahead and proceed with this. And now he understands what I was trying to tell him, because I said I just have to wait for the right time to do this, because I don't know. I'm kind of freaked out, something. And at that point, 2017, that's when I met Dr. Greer, and then fast forward to recently in April, making this happen with the government and telling them and testifying and briefing them what's going on, So the flack that I'm seeing with this is, there was a guy, apparently it was a Marine that came out with Dr. Greer that was like more than 10 years ago. I think his name was Joshua or something like that. And he was a Stinger operator, so he was like an anti-air gunner, if you want to call it that. I don't know the MOS. But apparently he was in South America and he witnessed a crash retrieval. And so he stated the same thing. This paramilitary organization kind of looked very similar. Obviously, this was in the 90s, so they didn't look that dissimilar to what I saw. But he talked to a paramilitary organization. He talked about the noise that this craft made that he saw that was shot down, had a hole in it. So it was a guitar amp, because that's the only way to describe it. If it's reverse engineered, it's going to mimic the same kind of technology that these actual crafts have, right? This paramilitary organization, well, yes, that's how they operate. They're not going to be identified in any kind of way. It's going to be a generic black uniforms and gear. So, of course, and, everybody's like, oh, at least the Reddit that I'm seeing, and they said, oh, the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Okay, that's another thing. And it probably wasn't the same guy, but the same method. There's only one word that comes to that. It's called corroboration. Yeah. And it's not the first time that this guy's saying it. It's not the first time that other people have said this. But the thing is, people only pay attention to when stuff's thrown in their face, such as what I'm doing and what these other people are doing. There's going to be people who are going to come out after me who are going to talk about the same thing. I know I'm not the only one. And maybe I can get one of my Marines, that were there to actually come forward, and maybe, ideally it'd be all of them, but I know how this goes. And one guy responded when I had these government officials and Dr. Greer trying to bring one of them forward, and he said absolutely not. He sent a text message saying it's not worth the risk to my family, my life, my career, because he's still in the military. He's a commissioned officer now. And he was very repetitive about that, and he says, don't ever ask me to do this shit again, and you need to get the fuck out of whatever you're in. But it's the response that when I asked him to do this, and that's what he responded to, what else could it be? Yeah. So in a sense, that kind of corroborates it, but it corroborates the seriousness of how they're in fear of their life. Yeah. The other guy, I didn't hear from anything. And they even taken my social media down, because after I started coming forward, I just don't want people blowing up my fucking inboxes, trying to ask me details or questions or try to get interviews. I'm not about that. I'm not, the fact that our lives are kind of coming to hell to a degree because of being pursued with these helicopters and things like that. There's other ramifications that may happen that I'm not aware of, but you know what? There's a risk to things, and that's how this is going to happen. And if that's what's chosen, then I just got to figure out how to mitigate that as well.
Well, let's talk about, we had spoken offline a little earlier about all the media that's reached out. I know you had an article in the Daily Mail.
Daily Mail, and then obviously the other facets are related to Daily Mail published this. Well, they misconstrued a lot of that, and then they end up going in from David Grush to bashing Dr. Greer about it. So it was something that they trying to use like to get people's attention, and they go into this fucking narrative. I've had News Nation, I've had CNN, I've had MSNBC that reached out through LinkedIn, through other emails, because my email gets blasted all over the place these days. And I've got 4 emails, so I got the fucking shitty one I hand out to people because I don't want to get spammed through my business emails because that's money that's sitting on the table if need be. And I declined every single one of them because I know that they're going to push this false narrative. The false narratives that they're evil ETs, and this is what David Grush is pushing now, saying that, they're malevolent and he's seen people, ETs die, or he's heard ETs kill people and things like that. Well, first and foremost, if there is a species of extraterrestrial that's out there and they happen to be fucking malevolent, it's not wise to shoot their shit down or kill any of them because guess what? They're highly advanced. Yeah. If they can make this kind of stuff, imagine what they can do if they weaponize it. So it's something that, this needs to stop because all it's doing is just it's just portraying fear out to people.
Yeah.
They did this with COVID. You see the response of that. People are still living this way, living like COVID exists to this day, which it probably does, but it's not nearly as damaging as what people are saying.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as was hyped up.
No, it wasn't. And you still have people fucking afraid of their lives. And this is the thing that is sad to see that. So this whole, now that people are thinking about this going on, now that all of a sudden worst case is going to happen. It's just this whole fear being portrayed in the media to try to scare the shit out of people, either get ratings or try to get people tuned into their networks is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more of a personal game for them because they get money off of views. So
now that you've set the record straight, do you think you'll go on any of these media outlets?
No.
No?
I'm not looking to get fucking famous from this dude.
Yeah.
I just want to get this information out. This ain't gonna get, I've had people try to approach me with book deals and shit like that. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. This has nothing to do with trying to get money. This is trying to make sure that, and I'm not trying to convince the public here. And I'm getting that on record too. This isn't trying to convince the fucking public that this is real. I'm trying to convince the government, and thankfully they are convinced enough to actually do something about it. That's my main objective with this.
Good
because
for you.
When they come out and they start talking about the bills that they're talking about, legislations, because of people like me standing up, along with other whistleblowers coming out and talking about the same kind of corroboration, that there's man-made stuff going on, that there's nefarious activities going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and they're making money illegally, and they're murdering or killing people doing it.
I'm glad you're doing it.
I'm glad too, man.
Takes a lot of
it
courage.
scares the shit out of me. I wake up every day unsure like what the fuck's going to happen, but that's why you had to take it day by day. And at the end of the day, there's people looking out for me, which is great, in the government and spiritually as well.
Good.
And that's where I'm going to thrive with this, because guess what? If they can silence me, but they can't silence the fucking truth. And they've been trying to silence the truth for far too long. And it needs to stop. And there's anybody, whistleblowers too, this is the thing I'm going to urge. Anybody who has any information with this, whether they witnessed similar things with this, whether, you're in the opposite spectrum. If you're anybody who's working in these programs, I know there's people who are listening to your show about this, by the way, who are probably on that side of the coin. Fucking man up and come the fuck out.
Yeah.
You got to stop the bullshit. And anybody who knows about this, well, guess what? If you know the truth and you're not revealing it, then you're complicit to it too. So I'm urging, get a hold of me. I'll throw my email if you can put that link in. And most of all, get a hold of Dr. Greer.
I'll put that link in there.
Okay. But yeah, Dr. Greer, he's been a good resource, and people need to understand, just like you understand with this. He is basically a sounding board for all of us who have coming forward. And all he's doing is relaying information that he knows from people. He's got a strict vetting process with this. I know people can attest to that as whistleblowers. The fact is, he's not just going to take anybody's word because, somebody said something, right?
I talked to him. I just interviewed him, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked him, how did he decipher who the bullshitters are from the real ones? And we went into that because I think that's extremely important.
Yes, it is. And it's not, he's just not taking anybody's word for it.
Yeah.
He asked me repeatedly, in law enforcement especially, the tactics they use is they ask the similar questions, and especially the meeting I had with the Pentagon and all these other agencies, it's like they ask the same thing because they do interrogations on a daily basis. But the fact is, my story is not going to fucking change. The way that I'm doing details is not going to change. My simple task with this is just to tell people what happened.
Good.
That's it. I'm not trying to gain profit. I don't want to be fucking famous. The only thing if I'm going to be famous for this, the only thing I want to be famous for is, oh, that's the guy that fucking stood up and wasn't afraid to do it. And he got the truth out there.
Good for you.
If I can fucking live with that, perfect by all means.
Well, Michael, I know it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, man. And I commend you for it. And it's an honor to have you in here.
Well, Shawn, thank you, man. And what you're doing on your networks, your podcasts, your YouTube, I mean, you have a big audience. And I hope, I got people trying to poke holes. Go for it. I don't give a fuck what they think. They weren't fucking there with me. They weren't there with my Marines. They want to talk shit. Go for it.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
If you could say anything to the other 5 Marines that were on the ground with you that day, because they might be watching, what would you say to them?
Don't fucking leave me hanging, guys. Don't leave me hanging. We're family. We're fucking brothers. We went through this shit. And I get that you got family. I get that you got kids. I got, moving on. But fuck, man. I mean, you see what I'm trying to do with this. And I'm just trying to get the truth. I hope that they do. And if I can get them to come out and at least understand that, there may be some aspects that are uncomfortable, with what I'm having to deal with. But it's just the reality of things. It's not pretty. But if you got the fucking balls to do it, I don't have kids. Me, I still got a lot to lose at the end of the day. And I know they do too. But the fact is, I'm just sick and tired of people bitching about things and not doing anything about it.
Me too.
And it's all a bunch of talk in this fucking world. It's all a bunch of talk. That's all I see on social media. That's why I'm glad I'm off of that. You know what I mean? That's why I'm glad I'm off, because guess what? I don't get to see that anymore. I get to focus on what I'm trying to do. And for me, having people reach out to me that have open minds and are like, you know what, I actually heard about something like this happening in Vietnam. Or they're like, I heard about this happening in 2004. And then there's people who are coming out that are participating in these operations unknowingly because they think the constitutionality of it's legal, when it's not. And that's why this is happening, because these people think that at the end of the day, they're doing something that's oversought. And they don't know that degree. It's very compartmentalized, as you know, being a CIA. They only know what they're told. And they only know what they're briefed on, and what they're allowed to have access to. It depends on what they're doing.
That's how they keep it secret.
Yes, they do. And not everybody's going to know that. So I hope that anybody who's in those industries understands that, if there's anything that seems off, don't approach it how the guy that was at the Pentagon that talked about U.S. forces being involved in Ukraine. I'm sure you heard about that because you saw FBI HRT raid his house and took him into custody. And he's probably going to sit in prison for the rest of his life because of revealing classified information on these platforms.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And these guys that are with me that are doing this, they're not doing it either. And the thing is because he did in that way means it's illegal because it's classified material to a degree. It may be illegal, but he screwed that up. Now, the way that we approached it was because we contacted the government and said, hey, this is what I know. This is what I was subject to. And they were, of course, because I approached it in the right way, they're going to reward you with the protection, with the law that they passed to make sure that you are well protected, regardless of what happens in a legal fashion. So these other whistleblowers need to understand that. So they can come forward. They're going to have the same protections. That's why I can paint them a picture and tell them what to expect. I can point them in the direction of who they need to talk to. And just the humanity needs to understand that this false narrative that's going to be portrayed in the media, such as alien invasions and stuff like that, it's been planned since the 50s. There's documentations talking about this. As far as SAIC, or Science Applications International Corporation, talks about the stagecraft. Honestly, if you're somebody who's such a high developed species or something like that, it's like walking by ants.
Yeah.
Are you going to fuck with them? No, you're just like, there's fucking ants. They just walk by. I think like the same thing that they do with us.
Yeah.
Why are they going to fucking try to fuck with us? But the same thing, we all of a sudden start shooting them down and then reverse engineering their stuff and then trying to weaponize it, and then we're using it against each other for nefarious activities, trying to use fucking, these advanced projects to do very illegal, very dangerous stuff. It blows my mind how much this goes down.
Yeah.
My goal is just to hopefully get this fucking changed.
Well, I hope it does.
Me too, buddy.
We'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Cheers. DC Long,
Shawn,
welcome to the show, brother.
pleasure to meet you.
So we met also at Dr. Greer's conference in DC with the Whistleblower conference, and I just want to say it's an honor to have you here. I know it takes a lot of courage to come out and talk about what you're talking about after so long, and we're here to get your testimony of what you saw out to the public. What are your goals?
It's an honor to be here, first of all. We spoke earlier downstairs. It can't be pushed further. I mean, you have to give yourself more credit because I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for the people that you've had on before. When I had no strength left, I just happened to come across it. And, you're the reason I'm here just as much. So my goals reflect your goals.
I'm glad you are here, and I'm glad the show helped you. It's helped a lot of people, and I said it before, I'll say it again. One of the main things we do here is we want to bring hope, especially to vets, overcoming all the trauma that has gone on for the past 20 years, and it will come again, and document history, tell truth, expose corruption, and again, bring hope. And you're a perfect example of that hope. So thank you for saying that.
I appreciate it.
But now, before we get too sentimental here, I want to give you an introduction. So DC Long, you're in the DC Long, you're in the U.S. Army, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 1997 to 2013 was your service, medically retired from injuries received from a combat jump. Your father was a government contractor also at Fort Bragg, and you had a encounter with what we call monolithic slab hovering off the ground at range 19 at a secret underground bunker. We're here to get your eyewitness account on what happened on that day. When was that? When did this happen?
That happened in 2011. At the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, when I was still in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Were you still active?
Yes, I was. And incidentally, it had nothing to do with my military career. Anything that I did in service had absolutely nothing to do with it, in the sense that, as you said, my father was a government contractor. And on occasion, I had a 30% stake in the business. So he would ask me to help him out whenever I could. So I took leave. I came back down to Carolina to help him out. That day, the day in question, he was in the 18th Airborne Headquarters, G5 War Room. What he was doing there, I didn't ask. He didn't tell me. But that's where I met him. He told me that we were going to get an escort from JFK Warfare to take us over to a place called Range 19. Is it thundering outside?
It is.
Okay. I didn't know if you'd set me up. But where was I? I apologize.
You got selected to go to Range 19.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they called us. He called me up, said that we had an escort coming from JFK Warfare to meet us and take us to a place called Range 19.
Just real quick, what was your dad's business as a contractor?
It was turnkey. Originally, it started out doing residential and commercial construction, from the monolithic slab to turnkey. Everything was subcontracted in-house. So it's whatever you needed, as long as you had plans.
It was construction.
Right. That was the main purview. Just
why do you think you guys got selected to do this?
Well, as long as my dad was there, he's always had hunting land in North Carolina. And a lot of the guys from group that he met there would come down to his land, go hunting with him. A couple of the Delta Cats that he knew take us on their planes. We'd go down to Arkansas and do some duck hunting. And it's all over the U.S., Montana, Colorado, Mesa, elk hunts, bear hunts. Yeah, it's just the guys who were into it. That's how they got tied in. And he did submit everything that he did through the Army Corps of Engineers. that's where he would submit all of his bid submittals for the contracts. Like the Forcecom building that they built on Fort Bragg. He was responsible for the top 3 levels of it. And but as far as how he got tied in to do the work around McKellar's Lodge during the SF compounds, I have no idea. We didn't talk about that in that sense. So, yeah, I just assumed it was the guys that he had met, and I knew him well enough just not to ask questions. They got the bids into where it
needed to go.
Say again?
They got the bids into where it needed to go.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not like it was a public bid. Not everyone could. Yeah. Because I imagine there were things that they weren't supposed to see, and we just weren't naturally curious people. So it's not like they had to worry about us saying anything.
Yeah.
The day that I met him up there, like I said, the escort comes to meet us. It's one of the guys that he knew that he had hunted with. I didn't know this gentleman. But they pick us up in a van. We get in the back of it. They take us out about 15 minutes. And I could tell it was going towards the direction. I don't know if you're familiar with Fort Bragg.
I'm not.
Okay. There's only one direction you can go to get to the live fire ranges, to get to the drop zones and things like that. So I assume we were headed towards Sicily or Normandy drop zone because that was the direction we were going. The van that they had us in, it didn't have any windows. You couldn't see to the front. It was just a cattle car. And we were joking they were going to take us away, ask him what he did, and we're going to head to Leavenworth for a little while. But we get there, and as soon as the door opened, it looked like a literal dump. There was just trash everywhere. Not like people just leaving stuff out. It was an actual dump. There was a 45-degree concrete door setting out of one of these hills that was directly in front of us, no further than you and I are to each other now. And so we go inside, meet another escort in there, take us to this freight elevator. We get in there, 2 series of buttons, didn't have any writing on it. One of the guys looks at my dad as saying to both of us, keep your head down, your eyes on the heels of the man in front of you, or you'll be shot. And we kind of started giggling because, at least I knew one of the guys was one of his buddies, people that he used to hunt out with. And the other guy, I recognized him as the guy who we went hunting with before. I knew later on that they were both Delta operators. If they were still active, I have no clue.
Do you know their names?
I do.
Do you want to say their names?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you later why. But yeah, hell no.
So you're seeing familiar faces, which makes you comfortable,
right?
And you don't realize how
the shitstorm I just stepped into. Yeah, absolutely not.
What exactly were you guys there to do?
What he told me was that we were going down below ground to set up a shoot house. An indoor live fire range that was going to be underground. Nothing new. Again, I didn't think anything of it. We had done other shoot houses before with the open tops that can be viewed from above.
Mm-hmm. With a catwalk.
It
didn't even phase you.
It was just another day at work.
Okay.
And I was just there to help him out. But we get down, the doors open, and the first thing I see are these personnel connexes off to my right, the smaller ones, not the larger ones that you see scattered around, or like the ones you'd see on a big rig carrying around. These were the small ones. You would throw your personal gear in to go before you get shipped overseas. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I looked past them, I could see this giant monolithic slab just sitting there. At first, it didn't, once again, it didn't set off any alarms. I didn't think much of it, but the closer we got to it, I could feel this intense vibration. But you couldn't hear anything. It was dead silent in there. The loudest thing was the footsteps that I could hear, and
What did the vibration feel like?
it felt like being at a concert, standing next to one of the speakers, and
Without
the
the
bass
noise.
just permeating through your body without the noise.
There was zero noise. Just
Zero
vibration.
absolute zero. I could still hear myself breathing over this, but inside, it was such a strange feeling to have. So the closer I got, I was like, well, I got to check this out. So I go down to one knee, faking I got to tie my boots, and then I glance up underneath it, and there's absolutely nothing underneath this damn thing. Nothing holding it up whatsoever.
What did the slab look like?
It just looked like a granite slab, but the sheen on it is what caught my attention the most. It was kind of in between being polished or just completely translucent. There was something behind it, but you could tell it had a smooth surface to us. And the only lights that were on in that hangar that we were in were directly over our head where we were walking through that walkway. And
How big was the slab?
oh God, it was about 20 foot long. It was about 7 foot tall, and I couldn't tell how wide it was. By that point, I was already directly in front of it.
So there's like it would be impossible for a human to even think about picking something like this up.
Oh, there's no way.
Okay.
Even with the construction that we've done, if you had to pick up something like that to move it anywhere, you would need at least 3-4 cranes.
Oh, wow.
Herrera could tell you better.
Okay.
The scope of equipment that it would take just to get it off the ground, not even to transport it to another location. But at this point, I'm still down on my knee, and I'm looking, and behind it, I can see 2 people standing. The only thing I can see is their feet, but there's this boulder directly behind it, and it's on the ground. And I glance over my shoulder, and there's a guy with his back turned to me standing in front of another boulder identical of the other one that I could see up underneath the monolithic slab, and he's just pushing it with one hand. And then I assume he's pushing it in the other direction because it's just freely spinning, no wobble. It's like it was attached to the top and the bottom, and it was paper mache. That's how easily this guy was just spinning it around.
Wow.
Now, at this point, the escort behind me kicks me in the back, says, let's go. So we get up, keep going, go down a flight of stairs. That's when we get to what we call the shoot house. You could see old lanes where they had actually used it before as a live fire range underground. And we'd probably only been down there 20 minutes maybe. Father was taking notes on the dimensions, what we needed, what I guess he understood what they wanted. And I know that we had to replace the walls. It's inconsequential to the story, but we had to replace the rubber on the walls for the shoot house. And in that amount of time, we go back upstairs, exact same route that we took on the way down, and everything's empty when we get to the hangar again. Everything, the 2 boulders in the back, the monolithic slab, all of it is absolutely gone. And we weren't, 100 yards below these guys. We were just 1 flight below them. So whatever it was that they were taking out, we would have heard it. Even the people making noise around it, you would have still been able to hear. But it was dead silent. Like I said before, there was nothing in there. Just our feet, but coming back through, it was absolutely gone. Everything in there just vacated. And at that point,
How much time had passed?
Less than 30 minutes. Less than 30 minutes. Because it didn't take us long to do what we had to do downstairs.
And this was just an assessment. You guys weren't actually... You weren't doing any construction or repairing the walls
None
or anything. It was
whatsoever.
just hey, this is what we need to do. So there was no equipment that you were operating that would have muffled any sound that was going on above the
right. Taking measurements, layouts. The loudest thing was the tape measure we were using. That, a roll tape, and a notebook. That was it. That was the only thing that was the only thing we had down there.
How far away from the slab did you feel the vibration? Did you feel it before you saw it?
No. Whenever when the doors of the freight elevator opened and I looked down, I could see it.
Okay.
I mean, it was no farther than from here to that camera pod, 6-7 feet away from me whenever we were walking in. But what made me stop?
It was that close.
Right. What made me stop was as close as we got. I noticed that in front of me with my dad and the other escort in front of him, it was almost like hopping a tripwire. When you're on the trail, you just get it and go. And that was the first thing I noticed. And then the closer I got to it, that intense vibration, and I was just too curious.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it. I had to figure out what it was. And I really shouldn't have.
When did the vibration stop?
It didn't stop until I walked away.
Okay.
In the center, looking at the top of it, you could see this black box. I've tried to describe it before, and it was extremely difficult. It just looked like a small black GMTK toolbox that a military mechanic would have or carry around. It wasn't very big, and it just had 2 leads that came off of it, and it looked like it was wrapped in a casing that you could almost see something inside of it, but it wasn't mechanical. It wasn't moving. It didn't have lights. It was just opaque, but it didn't really seem to serve any purpose. But the other boulder had the same thing on top of it. But
So I'm sorry. Are you saying you saw 2 boulders and a slab?
Yeah.
And they were all 3 of them at the same time?
The slab itself, the monolithic slab, it was about 12 to 15 inches off the ground.
Okay.
And whenever I knelt down to tie my shoes, I could look through it, and I saw the first boulder that I noticed, and it was just sitting on the ground.
Okay.
And then I glanced back, and that's when I saw the other boulder that had the same black box on top that was being moved around.
And that was levitating.
Yes. So
One
there was
boulder
a total of 3.
levitating, one slab levitating, one boulder on the ground.
Correct.
Okay. Did the slab have a black box anywhere near it?
The monolithic slab?
Yeah.
It did.
It did? Where
Yeah.
was that located?
It was on the top near the center where I was feeling most of the vibration. It was like the closer I got to it, that's where it was the most intense, at the center of the slab, where that box was on top of it.
Okay. Keep going.
And after that, we go back upstairs the way we came, like I said. We get out of the door to leave. Fan's still in the same place. We hop back in. We take that same 15-minute drive back to 18th Airborne Headquarters. They gave us our phone back. I got my ID. And then my dad said something to one of the other guys that I recognized that he knew, that I didn't know his name. But that guy took everything that my dad had, minus his phones. He took the notes, he took the tapes, everything from him there. And I didn't think much of it at that point. I didn't know if that was something he was going to submit to the Army Corps of Engineer rep that he had, whoever was going to coordinate, or give him the go-ahead to submit a bid to do this project. So to me, again, that didn't set off any bells. We're getting ready to leave. As I said, let me back that up. Before we go and get our phones and our identifications, the second guy that I recognized, the one that I do know, he was upstairs in the G5 War Room in the 18th HHC. And it's just him sitting at the desk as soon as you go into the vault. And he's got 2 pieces of paper. And he's like, I need you to sign this. And it was an NDA. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not going to sign that. Come on, man. Really? It's like, you know me. I don't give a shit. And my dad just kind of played it off to the same thing. He's like, man, I'm not signing that shit. So that's whenever we leave. At that point, I'm getting ready to go back to Georgia. This is roughly 24 hours later. I get a phone call. It was one of my dad's employees. He's like, hey, man, what's going on? I was, no, not much. Just headed back to work. He said, well, we can't get to work. So what do you mean? He's like, well, everything, they called it the barn where we had all of our equipment stationed, where they would meet before they would go to Fort Bragg. He said, the barn's locked up and everything's gone.
This is the same day?
No, this is 24 hours later.
Okay.
Whenever I'm getting ready to go back home. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, everything's gone. So I try to call my dad. I can't get up with him. I was like, just stand fast. I'm coming down there. So I get down there, and like you said, barn's locked up. Everything down there that I could see. I mean, you can still go there to this day. You could see our staging area and how big it was and all the equipment that we had there. It's absolutely barren. There's nothing there. It's all gone. And my dad at the time lived just around the corner from there. I go up there to his house, and the door is kicked in. And like the video I showed you earlier, downstairs, I did that to illustrate how close me and my father were. Because just telling the story from this point on, it sounds inconsequential. But like, oh, well, sons and fathers have problems all the time. It's no big deal for bad blood to take over, and just people can be too much like each other, bullheaded, and not be able to communicate. And that's why I showed you that, so you could see what kind of, I mean, I've called the damn guy my hero, because he was. But I get in there, and my dad's sitting at his couch. And his office is just to the left of his living room, and everything is torn out. Everything is gone. And I was like, what's going on, man? He's like, it's all gone. I was like, do you think this has something to do with Range 19? And he stood up, that man you saw, and he said, don't you ever fucking mention that name to me again. And that was the last time that I got to spend any time face to face with my daddy. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a life, a business, everything that we built together, and I got no answers. I had no excuses, no reasons, no answers whatsoever. Just unreturned phone calls. The few times I ever did get a chance to speak to him, it was only my voice being heard. He'd just hang up on me.
He'd hang up on you.
Yeah. I didn't. My God, it wasn't until 2021 that I got to see him again. I didn't get to.
He would just refuse to see you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it made me wonder, what could somebody threaten you with to make you turn your back on your own child? I don't know how many children you have, but I killed for my country. What in the hell do you think I would do for my babies? And I'm his only son. I'm his legacy. Every loan from the beginning of time to me is, if it stops with me, then that's where it stops. But he gave me that. To us, that was important. I cut my ties. I let it go where it's so hard to talk about, man. But let's get back to my part of that affects my career and why I was retired. It was.
Is your dad still alive?
No, he's not.
When did he pass?
November 10th, 2021.
How?
Well, that's. They said that he had aggressive cancer that they found late, that he was just ravaged. It was all over. And I know shit happens. I'm no stranger to that. With our careers and all the guys in this room, none of us are strangers to things happening. We have a better way of accepting it than most people do, I think. But not him, not like that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't get into that part of life. It's just, even some of it to me that I'm aware of, irrefutably makes me feel like it's just absolutely insane. But I will never believe that my father died of cancer or natural causes. A man as big and as powerful as him, not because he couldn't have been taken. We're all measured. It was just he was healthy. And then in 2 months, he went from being 240 pounds to 105.
Wow.
Just, I mean, they called me and told me that he was in the hospital, and I went to go see him. I walked by his room twice. Honestly, the first thought that crossed my mind is, man, I feel bad for that guy. That sucks. And then when they told me that's who it was, I went in, and he still couldn't even look at me. And I don't know why. And I took his hand. I said, look, man, I don't even know if you can talk. He had the chemo scars or some looked like, I assume, were chemo burns on his mouth. It was just these gnarly burns on his face. And his eyes were just cracked with jaundice. And I was like, man, we're square. I don't care what happened. I love you. And a tear went down his cheek, and I was asked to leave. He started to code, and that was the last time I saw him. It's shortly after the incident. It was in late 2011, early 2012. I've already been J&PI kitted out for a combat jump. Got the full pack. Got the 1950s weapons case dangling. And I was the first man in the stick. They gave us, told us the 30-second sign. We're all hooked up and ready to go. The jump master's got his arm up, getting ready to hit me in the back. And then we see shuffling, and I'm only one of 12 guys that I jump with every time. It never deviated, no change. That was my team. It didn't matter if it was CONUS, OCONUS. Those were my guys, only 12. And a guy from the back shuffles his way to the front, and it's one of the escorts. He is unmistakable. You can't. I mean,
really?
You know.
Yeah.
Good evening, this is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Larry Lasser, CBS News correspondent, and Kenneth Crawford, National Affairs Editor of Newsweek magazine. Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Antarctica Treaty of 1959. An agreement signed by 12 nations in which the Antarctic continent was made demilitarized to be preserved for scientific research. What do you think about that?
I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is.
He was also previously contracted by Raytheon Polar Services as a cook to work on a cat train that went across the ice, and he said the express purpose for him, I should say, for that team working for Raytheon was they were searching for missile site locations.
They find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily.
And at first, it just didn't connect with me. It just, I just gave him a, hey, how you doing? And he just winked at me. As soon as that John Master's arm came up and the green light's getting ready to go off, no sooner than it hit and I felt his arm coming down, I feel something slap me on the side of the face, and it was the static line. And that man took off out of the aircraft. And when he did, it snapped my neck. And it pulled me out upside down, deployed my combat gear. Long story short, at a complete oscillation, and I just smacked the ground, and I woke up a month later. Career's over. And I'll tell you something else.
Do you mean you burned in?
Yeah.
Your chute didn't.
Oh, my chute.
What happened?
My chute deployed. But whenever I fell out of the aircraft, and I think maybe we were jumping from 800 feet, if I had to guess, that's what it looked like from the horizon. But whenever he hit me going out of the aircraft and the static line went taut and it snapped my neck and I fell out of the craft, I'm not even sure how I fell out, but it deployed my lowering line on the way out. So whenever my canopy did open, it just started a complete oscillation.
Okay.
I remember looking down and seeing daylight and just smack, and it was over.
You think that was an assassination attempt?
I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was. And the only reason I tell you that is because when my father died, not even a week after I buried that man, I'm at our new house at the beach. Nobody knew I'd been there. I hadn't even changed my driver's license over. I hadn't even told the VA that's where I'm living. Not even a week after that man was buried, I get a knock at the door. It's that same guy who cut me out of the door. Hands me a note. It said, thinking of you. He's like, hey, sorry about your loss, buddy. What would you do? And Dr. Greer asked me, he said, well, did you feel like they were trying to intimidate you or they're trying to hurt you? Absolutely not. If that was the case, I would have never seen it coming. To me, it just felt like somebody looking you dead in the eye and said, I can touch you anytime I want. And then everything started flooding back, and that's what led us to here. I wrote out that entire story to Dr. Greer.
You fell out, and it was a week after you buried your old man, you said? Or the day after? I'm sorry.
Whenever he showed up?
Yes.
That was a week after I buried my father. At Rudy Maris Cemetery in Dublin, North Carolina. Nobody knew I was there. Nobody.
So this is 2021.
Yes.
Just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And this happened, when was the accident? When was the assassination attempt?
2011, 2012.
Did you recognize him?
I've got it written down everywhere. It's so hard to remember. That's when I got this.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's just been fuzzy. And that's what led us to this. That scared me so damn bad that I had decided I wasn't suicidal. Please don't get me wrong. I was not depressed. I just felt like at that point that it's not about me. I've got my children. If something happens to them, it's my fault. So I figured if I quietly recuse myself, who's going to know better? What's it going to matter? My story's over. Get to see my dad again. And hopefully save my kids from this bullshit. Because everything changes. It's one thing when you lose your brothers. It's one thing when you lose your family. But if you worried about losing your children, that's taking it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
You know, just because we choose to be peaceful at this point in our lives does not mean that we forgot how to be violent. I'll take the whole damn world down to protect those kids. And I know you would do the same for yours.
Yeah.
But what stopped me was you.
Are you in contact with your mom?
No.
Is she alive?
She's alive.
Was she still married to your dad when he passed?
No.
Was she still married to your dad in 2011 when this happened? When you witnessed the monolithic slab?
No.
No contact?
No. And unfortunately, I remind her a lot of my father. And it's nothing against her. We still have a great rapport. I mean, I'm 43 years old with everything I've been through. I still blow my mama a kiss whenever I leave her. It's not like, we did the same thing my dad did. It's just I know how painful it was for her to lose him, and hearing me speak, we have the same eyes.
Do you guys ever talk about this?
No.
Was there any communication from your dad to your mother that you're aware of?
The only way she's going to know about any of this is by watching the podcast.
Okay. All right.
But, and that's, I'm ashamed, absolutely ashamed from being too afraid to keep going. I didn't even bring up the homeless bit because I did it to myself. It wasn't some crazy circumstance that I could blame on anybody else. It was my fault because I was afraid.
So this destroyed your life.
You're damn right it did. I'm still trying to rebuild, but I don't ask anybody for anything. It's not about that to me. I lost all familial contact whenever I lost him in that sense. I mean, the war is bad enough. Watching your brothers go through what you feel like you should have went through. I can't speak for everybody, but survivor's guilt tears me up every day. If there's one thing I hate myself for, isn't not trying. It's just not giving enough. I can't. The names I say at night when I go to sleep, the men that I think about, I miss them so damn bad because those guys, I knew that they would die for me. Some of them did. And the one safety net that I had here was him.
When you went it was just you and your old man that went to Range 19 that day? Or were there did you guys have any workers with you?
No.
Just you and your dad?
Just he and I.
Why are you coming forward? Why are you coming forward to educate the public about what you saw that day?
Same thing I said at the press conference. I'm damn tired of doing nothing. I couldn't take losing my career. I'm fine with that. I didn't think I was going to do it forever. I'm fine with losing material possessions, but one thing I will not stand for to watch people in this country just hand their freedoms over and think that the government's doing them a favor. Watching my brothers who would rather be homeless than have to deal with the bullshit that got us there in the first place. And it's not because we're afraid. It's because we don't feel like we did enough. We feel like we're just putting our burden on other people, and that's something that they don't deserve. You're willing to die for people who don't even damn like you. To me, that's absolutely fucking insane. But that's just the kind of people that we are. And it wasn't until I heard something that Herrera said, our oath didn't expire. Good damn luck taking this shit off my neck. Right now, somewhere, there's a little kid sitting somewhere across this world, and he's got his grandpa's combat boots, and one day he's going to be old enough to fit in them. And if we sit back and do nothing, if we do not lead by example, they're going to think that it's okay just to be quiet. I think for too damn long, good Americans, it doesn't matter if you're a combat vet to me. It doesn't matter if you didn't shed the same blood that I did. What matters the most to me is good people who believe in the flag. That was sitting over there that so many people died for, the one that was flying over ground zero. The sacrifice, whether it was a false flag or not, that flag is important to me. And I'll be damned if whatever life I've got left, I'm going to sit there and be quiet about it. Because there's a big fight. And if we do nothing, the bad boys are going to prevail. They're going to take over. And I don't think we want that. This world could be so much easier if they would just let it out. But somebody wants to make money off of it.
Well, I commend you for your courage, man. That means a ton to everybody that's listening. And I know what that takes. And I want to say, man, I'm sorry about your old man. I'm really sorry to hear about that. And
Yeah, but he'd be damn glad that you wouldn't let me go all the way. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
well, I'm glad you didn't. Glad you're here, buddy. But do you have anything you want to say before we end it?
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the UFO Whistleblower Marathon. This is part 3 of the 3-part series. Remember, all of these gentlemen have testified in front of Congress under oath. Today we have Eric Hecker, who is a firefighter contractor for Raytheon, which is a military-industrial complex company. And he was in Antarctica at a Raytheon facility and says that Raytheon has the technology to produce earthquakes all throughout the planet. But today, we're here to talk about Raytheon Technologies Corporation. Raytheon is an aerospace company that provides advanced systems and services for commercial, military, and government customers worldwide. Probed for corruption in government contracting since 1980s. You were in the South Pole from 2010 to 2011. Let's talk about what you were doing down there.
You got it.
What were you doing down there?
I was contracted for the summer season as a plumber. I did well enough in my summer season to garner a winter contract as well, which got me my full year's stay. I was also tasked with being a firefighter. I was a lead on the firefighting team, and because of that dual role capacity, I physically held a key that opened every single door in the facility. I had complete access to every compartment they manufactured. That was a rare position to be in.
What are you blowing the whistle on?
That there are technologies at the South Pole Station that people can't even consider that exist on this planet.
Like what?
Directed energy weapon systems is something that people need to get in their vocabulary fast. The ice cube neutrino detector is not simply a passive listening device as presented for the science that they're claiming it to do. It also has the capacity to transmit. There are embedded in the ice what are called digital optical modules, DOMs. They're about the size of a basketball. The array embedded in the ice is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. It is the world's largest telescope. And now, because we have proven that it can transmit, it's the world's largest directed energy weapons system. It is responsible for the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011 on the front end of the year.
How do you know for a fact that that was responsible for that?
Because I was present, and I have gone over this with the pertinent people that I will not be releasing their names.
Okay.
But I was on the team, let's just say, and I've confirmed this.
Well,
I've provided documentation from the actual manufacturer specs. So this unit was constructed, operated, and maintained by the University of Wisconsin, and just like every other device on the planet, whether you're driving an M1 Abrams tank or operating the ice cube neutrino detector, there's operator's manuals that tell you how things work. Right there in that information, free for everybody to find. I found it myself. I was directed to find it, I'll put it that way, and release this information. And it states very clearly that each one of these DOMs can transmit at 2,047 volts each. So these are currently the facts of life.
how do you know? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, how did it even come to your attention that this triggered an earthquake? If you're at the South Pole and New Zealand had an earthquake, I mean, how did you know it came from the South Pole?
Without divulging names,
Without divulging names.
I could only say that it was communicated to me from team members that were present and fully read in at the time, that they were aware. And since that time,
At the immediate, like the same day?
oh, absolutely, it was understood.
Well, what was said?
That we accidentally hit Christchurch, New Zealand twice when they were trying to fire up this weapon for the first time. That it was friendly fire. It was not on purpose, but it occurred. That the system is designed for that. And it was just friendly fire.
So this is a telescope. That sounds like a. Is it a telescope?
Absolutely, it is. It is a neutrino detector for sure. It can accomplish its primary purpose. It can also transmit and then provide a multifaceted platform for directed energy weapons systems.
Do you have any idea how the earthquake was initiated?
From misfiring the system.
Where
were they targeting?
Yes.
I don't know.
Does it go into the earth? Does it go into the atmosphere?
It can definitely go through the earth. I would consider that it might be able to do stuff in the atmosphere. I haven't heard that statement laid at its feet, but I wouldn't put it past it. I don't want to try to limit the functions of this device by my imagination or experience. I believe that's one of the problems with directed energy weapons is they are not like standard weapons of old where you have a gun and a particular caliber bullet, you pull the trigger and it does one thing. These platforms are way more complex than that. They do a lot of things.
What else do they do?
Excuse me. This system, additionally, in regards to the neutrinos, it detects the neutrinos that are apparently coming off of the new exotic propulsion systems for either off-world UFOs or reverse-engineered stuff on our planet.
What is neutrino?
Neutrino is a near-massless particle that goes at, close, or beyond the speed of light. It is so small that it can pass between the electron shell and the nucleus of pretty much every atom on the planet. In the capacity of being detected at the South Pole Station, when the neutrino impacts the nucleus of the water molecule of the ice in the glaciers at the pole, a reaction occurs. The nucleus and the neutrino become destroyed. A muon is created and ejected, and a blue flash of light known as Cherenkov radiation flashes in the ice, and that's what the DOMs, the digital optical modules, are detecting. That's their primary purpose as presented. Now, whether that neutrino comes from a quasar out in space or a exotic propelled engine off of vehicles that aren't being discussed contemporarily, it detects it, thus making it basically an air traffic control center for all non-discussed vehicles on this planet. So just like we have all the other air traffic on the planet and it's being completely observed and attended to, there's just another level of craft on this planet and another level of air traffic control tower that exists. This is that facility.
Back to tracking neutrinos.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Why are they tracking those?
Oh, for the purposes of science, they're claiming that there's a lot to be ascertained by understanding the difference between low power and high power neutrino ejections from cosmic occurrences. It's about that vague. This is what they spend our tax dollars on.
Let's talk about what else do they do?
The device is also for faster than light communications, quantum entangled communications at great distance. In, I guess it was the late 80s or early 90s, Gary McKinnon hacked NASA. And he found the list of the off-world space fleet and the captains of the ships respectively. We have a fleet out there. If we have a fleet out there, we need to communicate with them. This is that facility.
Can you explain quantum entanglement communications?
Yes, I don't think most people understand what I'm about to say anyway, but I will. The way quantum entanglement works is that you can take two particles, quantum entangle them, and then take those two particles and move them at any distance in the cosmos. And let's just say, for example, if you quantum entangle two electrons and you have them spinning in the same direction, and then you take one of those electrons and you shoot that thing out 100,000 light years from the original. If you then rotate the spin on the one electron, if you modify it so that its spin changes, the quantum entangled electron at any distance will simultaneously, in no time, switch its rotation also because they're quantum entangled. So these communication systems are taking advantage of this aspect of quantum mechanics that most people can't wrap their heads around, and this is what they're utilizing. It's just the new level of science that affords us the ability to communicate at any distance instantaneously.
I've heard about this. I've tried to dig into it, and it's hard to understand.
It is hard to understand. It would be my best way to put it is that when electricity first came out, it was very hard for a lot of people to understand what Nikola Tesla was getting at. But everyone was using it before they even understood it. And this is just where we are right now. It's just a new technology. It's a new conversation. People don't have to understand it yet. They just have to realize it's real.
What other kind of things can this?
Oh boy. Voice to skull technology. This is also in the foray of directed energy weapons.
What is that?
The ability to, let's just say, throw your voice into your head or my voice into my head, or allowing algorithms that now they can blanket a whole geographical area and they can make everybody change their thoughts. They can, I use the term intrusive thoughts. Back to that fork in the road analogy. If you find yourself where you have to make a decision about something, next thing you know, you catch yourself kind of having an argument in your head with your own voices. Well, the ability to add another one of your voices in there, but have it controlled by somebody else's microphone, so to say, is a very powerful tool. And I think this is a weapon of war that we are seeing happen to everyone around us. The Department of Defense recently started initiating protocols for their employees, their agents, to discuss Havana syndrome-like symptoms. And on that list is that their agents are hearing voices in their head. And this is what they're getting at. This is that technology that, next thing you know, you're trying to make a decision, but there's another Shawn in your head that now is actually somebody else's control. And through the manipulation of that voice, they can now push you. Just like we have, the cell phones are weaponized now, the social media platforms, and they can engage with an algorithm, and they know that they can push you in a direction by repetitive information being displayed in front of you, similar to the tachistoscope in grammar school, that they can learn your system and they can learn to manipulate it on a personalized level by just assessing you, what the things are that you're interested in, what are your weak points, what's the crack in the dam, what's the angle of attack. And it's through repetition and access. These are simply electromagnetic impulses in your head. It's not that they can't be read, it's not that they can't be copied, and it's not that they can't be just replayed with somebody else's control. I mean, I could get a voice changing thing and I could sound like you if I wanted to. I could call you on the phone, I could call your loved ones, and I could pretend I'm Shawn.
How are you finding all of this out?
Years of research. The McDonald's Corporation just had an ad come out a few months ago that they're looking into research and development in a technology that will afford them the ability to pump their commercials into your brain while you're sleeping. You think that they figured this out or some other company figured it out first? You think if they're going to have this available to them next year, you think that there weren't agencies that have been wielding this for a decade or so?
You're 100. Is there any? Where can I read about this?
It's immediately available on the internet that McDonald's put this out there.
McDonald's Corporation
is looking into putting commercials into our brains while we're sleeping.
And we can look that up.
Absolutely.
I gotta look that up.
Understood.
I've not heard of that.
Understood. But now imagine if they can do that next year.
Oh, I'm with you.
Who's been doing it for the last decade or so?
I'm with you. I'm
right?
100% with you.
So now when we look around the world and we see everybody acting the way that they are acting, let's consider that these intrusive thoughts have already been present. What do we do about this? These are the weapons of war contemporarily. It's very unfortunate, but it used to be that war was a bit more noble when we selected people, we put them in uniforms, we sent them over there to the battlefield, and we said, fight for us. And effectively, that would have been an act of attrition of each nation's resources until there was a victor. Now, unfortunately, they've circumnavigated the battlefield. Nobody's dressed in uniforms anymore, and the front line is every neighborhood that we're in. and the infrastructure is still under attack. It's just that now the average mortgage payer is in the line of fire. The list of Havana syndrome-like symptoms, which my South Pole crew and many South Pole crews are suffering, that other agencies are suffering, if people pay really close attention, they're going to notice that these symptoms are prevalent in the general population as well.
Interesting. I interviewed a former CIA agent about this who has Havana syndrome and has been speaking out on it quite a bit. His name's Mark Polypernopoulos. But is there anything else going on down there? I mean, we just went through a lot of stuff here.
Yes, actually. There's a system known as ELF, extra low frequency. It's also a massive antenna that's embedded in the ice there. When I arrived to the facility as a tradesman and firefighter, I was read into how everything worked because I needed for the safety of my crew to be able to battle fires and engage things appropriately. And at the onset, I was told that the ELF system is off. It's defunct, it's disabled, it is just sitting dead in the ice. But through my need to make an additional repair on something else and tracing back to a sub-panel, I was finding the circuit that I needed to lock out, tag out, and do all the safe repairs. But then I noticed that this other breaker that was supposed to be off was in the on position, and it was listed as the ELF. And I ran it up my chain. I said, what's going on here? I said, this is supposed to be off. I was told it's off now. And I was just given a hard, it's on. And that was the end of my need to know. They didn't want to tell me anything else. You have identified the circuit that you need to work on. You have been informed that you can safely do your job. Carry on. So I did my job. I made the repair that I needed to on the circuit next to the circuit that I was now informed is duly on and operating. So the ELF is up and running, and that, again, is a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform.
Do you have pictures of any of this stuff?
I have a lot of pictures of me in these facilities. They mostly just prove my presence.
If you hand those over, I'll display them on screen right now. If I can get them.
I can get you pictures before you present this to the world.
I would appreciate that. Let's talk about the clear air system called ARROW.
Yes.
Commonly referred to as the no-fly zone.
Yes. The ARROW building, ARO, is the Atmospheric Research Observatory. It is listed on the chart, the one that I gave you as well, as a no-fly zone in the vaguest sense of the term at first glance. But as any pilot knows, there's always, fine print. So the no-fly zone, as listed at the South Pole Station because of ARROW, simply provides a limit to the ability for a plane to fly too low. It sets the floor at 8,000 feet. You can't fly below 8,000 feet. A lot of people like to try to claim that there's a hole at South Pole Station and there's a no-fly zone that protects from you flying in an area that'll see the hole. And that's just total shenanigans. The no-fly zone limits your ability to fly low, not high. So with that height available, you will see everything available to see, which is ice as far as the eye can see. There is no hole in the ice at the South Pole Station. There may be one somewhere else. I can't testify to the entirety of the continent. It's huge. All I can say is that when people are talking about there being a hole at the South Pole, they're full of crap. They don't know what they're talking about. They're taking something that they know very little about and just running with it. They say in other ways that, a little information is a dangerous thing, and that's what these people are doing, is they're operating off of very little information. The Atmospheric Research Observatory, as I testified in D.C., I witnessed myself in doing my standard rounds in the winter season at South Pole Station, that building would, with great regularity, have a very powerful green laser beam shooting out of it into the cosmos. I believe through other things that I've located there, which is the chilled helium in a massive amount. It is chilled down to 4 degrees Kelvin in storage, which my understanding, this is something new that I'm learning about. It's called superfluids. Superfluids act very differently than other things in our scientific spectrum and are used for things called chemical lasers. Well, we had a superfluid and we had a laser. So I believe that what I'm learning on this is that it was probably a secondary means of long-range communication and or another weapons platform. June 18th was my birthday, right after Dr. Greer's event of June 12th. On June 18th, the National Science Foundation website could have posted anything they wanted for a photograph. But on my birthday, I would say I got a gift from someone in the program because they posted a picture of the Arrow Building's green laser blasting into the cosmos, which verifies exactly what I saw.
Interesting. And you think that might be a communication device? How would they be communicating with the laser?
I don't understand the science of it. I just know that it exists.
Okay.
The laser beam communication, direct line of sight, laser beam comms, microwave type comms, it exists.
You say a lot of the crew members from the South Pole are experiencing Havana syndrome symptoms. What are some of those symptoms?
They have mental degradation, troubles with their memory, fatigue, stuff like that, skin issues.
Headaches?
Yes.
The Antarctica Treaty of 1959, an agreement signed by 12 nations in which the Antarctic continent was made demilitarized to be preserved for scientific research. What do you think about that?
I think it's a load of malarkey. And I'm going to throw a gentleman's name out there that I have worked with. He told me very specifically at the time that we communicated. He's going to die when he sees this video. I work with a gentleman by the name of Aaron Bontrager, and he was also previously contracted by Raytheon Polar Services as a cook to work on a cat train that went across the ice, and he said the express purpose for him, I should say, for that team working for Raytheon was they were searching for missile site locations.
No kidding.
Correct. The whole idea of this being demilitarized is a load of baloney.
How do you think they're getting, how are they powering this facility?
I believe there's a secondary power source inside of the old pole that was built in 1957.
What do you mean the old pole?
The original pole, I should say, built in 1957, we referred to as old pole. There was other facilities that were manufactured, different stages of inhabitation of crew. So 1957 was the first one. It predates the Antarctic Treaty, which means that they could have had nuclear power there. I believe they did have nuclear power there, and that since then they may have maintained it, almost like a grandfather clause, or that they may have new, more exotic systems that are not in the legalese of the treaty.
Why do you think Antarctica is a no-fly zone?
Antarctica is not a no-fly zone.
Well, Arrow, commonly referred to as a no-fly zone. Why?
It's a misnomer. You can fly right over the no-fly zone. You just have to be higher than 8,000 feet.
Well, I'm asking, why do you have to be higher than 8,000?
Oh, because it's because of the they're doing science on the cleanliness of the air, so they just don't want it tainted. Similarly, there's no land traffic allowed in that area. So you can take a snow machine. If I wanted to go visit the building to do my rounds, I could take a snow machine up to a certain point, and then I had to stop the snow machine and walk because simply the exhaust gases from the machine would taint their sensors. So the only reason they're trying to block out vehicular activity is to keep the exhaust gases out of their sensors.
How do you get there?
How do you get to Arrow?
Yeah.
It's within walking distance of the elevated station.
How do you fly into Antarctica?
You fly in with a Herc LC-130, Herc on skis, and you just come in from outside of that quadrant,
Okay.
or above 8,000 feet.
Okay. How much air traffic is going around there?
During the summer seasons, 24 hours of operation, they typically have a few Hercs on deck idling most of the time, and a lot of fuel is brought in by Herc. Our waste is brought out by Herc when the airmen will allow themselves to be a flying garbage can, as they claim. But basically almost all operations and logistics were done by Herc. While we were there, in my 2010 season, they had brought in their first fuel haul over land as kind of an experiment to the process. And it's my understanding that they call this a traverse, that they have since increased traverse activity to drag large fuel bladders across the ice to resupply the fuel that way, being more economic than doing it by Herc, and then affording that volume of Herc space that's not being utilized for fuel now can, of course, do other things. The flight operations are almost 24 hours a day during the summer season because nothing moves in the winter season. So everything has to occur in a certain window.
Okay. Man, back to the putting voices in people's heads. Are you aware of any ways to defend against that?
Know thyself. It's an ancient practice, and it's an ancient practice for a reason. These modern technologies are bastardizations of ancient techniques. Way back in the day, they would call someone a magician who was adept at this skill. I could walk into the room and I would potentially have that skill set to put my thought in your head. It's just a technique. It's completely doable. But now we have people that are no longer going through these schools of nobility to learn to practice these things nicely. And we have evil people that are taking technologies and utilizing them, because again, it's just simply electromagnetic impulses. They can be read, they can be used, they can be hijacked.
Eric, is there anything that I'm missing that you want to bring to the public?
That's a great question. I want to emphasize that we are currently in a state of war that people aren't realizing.
What is that?
These weapons are being wielded around us, against us. There are power players that are above nation states. Geographical boundaries and political parties mean very little to the wealthy elite on this planet. We're pawns, we're chattel. I am a person for the people. We, the people of this planet, deserve a better future than the one we are being presented. We've all, through our blood, sweat, and tears, we've invested. Here in the United States, we've invested our taxpayer dollars for these people to create weapon systems that they're using against us. It's a sin. It's illegal. It's a sin. It's immoral. And we have to do better for the future generations of this planet.
Are you worried for your safety?
No.
Why not?
I'm just simply beyond that. I don't really care what happens to me. I care about doing the right thing.
Do you think you're in danger?
I guess theoretically people don't like me doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would say probably not.
Fair enough.
But work, if that's it, that's a lot of info in a short amount of time, and I really appreciate you coming here and inform us all. So have you been approached by any media outlets?
I've been approached by a lot of people.
Really?
And I pretty much tell them to go scratch.
Why do you tell them that?
Because I can tell from the way that they approach me, they're not looking to do justice by what I'm saying. They're what I refer to as dissipators, people that are looking to waste my energy, divert it into the wrong direction. I'm very fortunate, and I would say blessed, to have met someone like yourself who seems to be on the up and up and going to fight the good fight on this stuff, to get to the actual brass tacks truth and present it to the world in an untainted capacity. There's a lot of bad things going on this planet. I'm sure that you've experienced it yourself firsthand, and you're aware that a lot of people don't know that these things are happening in the shadows. I want people to know what's really going on this planet so they can make educated decisions about what they have to do to protect themselves and their children.
Well, that's very noble of you. Man, I really appreciate it. That's a lot of info to process.
I understand.
It's going to take me a minute to come up with questions, and would you be willing to come back?
I would love to come back.
Let me digest this, and then we'll come up with a date and do a longer form interview. I got to wrap my head around this stuff.
Understood.
In the meantime, be safe. Thank you for coming out here, and it's an honor to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.